This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. Without a healthy mind, being happy is hard. Visit betterhelp.com/kindafunny and see if online therapy is for you.
Yo, what's up? Welcome to PS I Love You XOXO episode 85. I'm your host, Blessing Adeoye Jr. Joining me is Gameonicist, aka Janet Garcia.
Yo, what's good?
How's it going?
It's going. I feel like the day's just getting started here, mostly because I slept in really late because I was up late.
No. Were you up late playing video games?
I was, which is very rare for me. We'll talk about it more for like what we've been playing, but I was playing some Beat Saber. Like I finally did the thing where you can add songs that aren't like, official. So it feels very like illegal to me. I'm like, am I gonna get arrested?
You weren't playing on PSVR?
No, I was playing on Oculus Quest.
How dare you?
But I have it on, do I have it on PSVR? I got it originally on the Quest. But it's one of the many it's funny because as time went on, and I know like in the VR community, it's big to want stuff ported kind of everywhere just to like VR so niche already that having exclusives is kind of counterproductive to moving, I think,
you're cutting
VR.
out a huge amount of the audience by having anything
Exactly.
exclusive.
But at the same time, it was kind of like a little salty on like the wanting PSVR thing to be appealing, where like so many of those good games are like available on wireless platforms. So yes, I did dabble.
I mean, that's why I'm excited for PSVR 2 to be going into like the different style of controllers that are more akin to something like Oculus Quest. Because the move wands sucked, but then also like the way that PSVR is set up, it's set so that it seems like it's going to be harder to port things over from PSVR to other platforms. And even going from PSVR 1 to PSVR 2, I still have a lot of questions on like how games are going to transition from one to the other, or if games are even going to transition from one to the other. That said, I will say Beat Saber is probably the only VR game where I might have preferred the wands compared to any other controller.
Well,
but
because it's more like the sticks then, right?
Yes, because of the form factor. Like it literally holding the PlayStation VR, the PS moves, right? Like they're formed exactly like the sabers from the Beat Saber. So I feel like I'm more engrossed in it. I'm waving those things like I'm waving a lightsaber. But like that said, I'm sure they track way better on other platforms. Like I want to say the few times I played Beat Saber on Oculus Quest, the tracking was magnificent. But then also on other platforms you do have the actual like you can take other music that aren't Beat Saber music but then put them into Beat Saber, or like check out other songs that people have actually mapped songs to, which is awesome.
Yeah, breaking the law.
Exactly. What songs have you done that aren't Beat Saber songs?
I I put in Faith by George Michaels because I'm like 50 years old. I also put in like DNA by Kendrick Lamar. I put in which it was okay. I put in Butter by BTS. Like I'm really just all over the place. It's funny because my boyfriend also added a bunch of songs. He's the one that I made him do it because I'm like, hey, I'm pulling up like a how-to, and I just can tell it's one of those things where like if I try to do this by myself, I'm just gonna create more work for you. So would you like to skip this step where I pretend like I'm doing it, and you can just add it? So he put a bunch of songs in there, and I think he put like I was making fun of him because he put in like some really weird stuff. Like he has the fucking Home Depot theme song in there, and like the some Kingdom Hearts song. I'm like, what is this
Home
weird
Depot theme song? Does Home Depot have a theme song?
Yeah, like well, now I'm doing the different song, but now I'm doing like
I was saying you're doing Ghostbusters.
But like the I don't know how to do it, but yeah, I don't know. Do you not know the Home Depot theme song? It goes
Why? Okay, first of all, I've never heard the Home Depot theme song. Second of all, Home Depot doesn't strike me as a company that would need a theme song.
It's like an iconic too. I have to pull it up on the side and try.
Fair. Is there a way we can search the Home Depot theme song?
Yeah,
I would rather not get DMCA. I'm sure it exists. I'm sure it's out there.
I'm looking it
all
up
of the
because
people
I wonder
watch it or listen to it on their own.
It's a thing, and it's really good. Like I feel
I'm sure
like
it's Kevin's favorite song because he loves.
I'm shocked that you don't know it, Blessing, just because you're on TikTok a lot, and that's been used for like different TikToks. Maybe you've heard it, and then you just don't know.
I'm listening to it right now.
Hearing it the whole time. But yeah, it's pretty good. It's ranked hard in the like fan made one, so I wasn't able to do it. But that's the other thing too. I'm gonna need to get better at this game if I'm gonna really like play through these songs. Some of the songs I like are just too like the the beats are too fast and I can't keep up with it.
I've never once heard this in my life.
Is
I've
your life
never
better now
once
that you've
heard
heard
this in
it?
my life. Do they use that in their commercials?
Yeah. I think
This
so.
is like
Now
a
I'm wondering
Mandela
if it's like
effect
a
level
false
thing.
memory.
Because I am shocked. I was expecting it. I was expecting to press play and it would jog my memory and I'd be like, oh shit, yeah, I've heard this a billion times. Press play. I've never heard. I don't recall this at all. I've
Yeah, no,
never
Home
once
Depot
heard
is
the
where
Home
it's
Home
at. It's like
Depot
that
theme
and the
song.
hot dogs are the things it does really well.
The hot dogs.
Yeah, have you never eaten at a Home Depot? They have like hot dogs. Some of them have hot dog stands
What?
outside. Not now during COVID as much because yes. So in the Midwest, which you're from the Midwest,
I'm
you're
from the
Illinois.
Midwest.
Yeah.
Yes.
In the Midwest, like in Chicago, they'd have like I don't know if it's associated with Home Depot or if it just happens to be outside, but they'd have like a Vienna beef hot dog stand. And they're like some of the best freaking hot dogs you can get. And
I
they
feel
have
like this might have just
them
been a
even in the
Chicago
West
thing
Coast.
for your
No,
Home
because
Depot.
it was in Emeryville as well, like
Huh.
in California. And I was
Yeah,
like,
looked
I
up
asked my
Home
boyfriend,
Depot
like, have you ever
hot
had
dog
these Home
carts. They're a thing.
Yes, they're really good. Home Depot hot dogs,
they
man.
didn't
It's like
have
some
that
of the
shit
best.
in Ohio.
It's even better than like the Costco hot dog, which is also like
What?
a pretty
That's
pretty
a high
decent,
bar. That's a high bar.
a pretty decent dog. I mean, the price isn't as competitive.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is a PlayStation podcast. But that's what I was doing with my time, just
God
diving into the
damn.
weeds.
I'm learning so much about Home Depot that I apparently just did not know. I didn't know they had a theme song. I didn't know
I
they
feel
had
like
hot
is this me
dogs.
fitting a stereotype, knowing so much about Home Depot? Like, is this, should I not be like?
Were you at
flaunting
like
this
actually?
knowledge?
How often were you at Home Depot to know they have
Not
hot
that-
dogs?
I don't know how often I was at Home Depot. I don't know. I was there often enough. I feel like there's certain areas, especially like in Chicago, like those kind of like Southside Plaza areas where it might be like I would stop by Home Depot just to get the hot dogs sometimes.
You're right. This is a PlayStation podcast.
This is
Let's
my
talk
real
about
life.
PlayStation. Funderstruck wrote it at patreon.com/kindoffunnygames, just like you can. Writes in and says, "What's up, PS I Love You crew? It's almost September, and it feels like PlayStation having some type of huge showcase likely won't happen. My question is, with another COVID-spoiled year, does PlayStation need a huge splash with a showcase, even though Horizon and other blockbuster games have been delayed to 2022? Or are a couple more state of plays more fitting? Deathloop might be the last PlayStation exclusive this year, but man, what a strong year it was." Now, I usually don't do this, right? I put this question up at the front because I wanted us to have something to talk about before we actually get into the proper topic of the show. Because as listeners and viewers might notice by now, Greg Miller isn't here. Greg Miller is taking the week off, but Greg Miller is on the topic of the show, and so you're gonna hear from him in a bit to talk about Far Cry. Wait, what was that?
The ghost of Greg.
The Ghost of Greg, yeah, exactly. He's here, just like the Ghost of Tsushima, but not like the Ghost of Halloween because Greg Miller doesn't like Halloween. But you'll hear from him in a second. But I did want to start off with this question because I thought this was a fascinating question to start off with. We're now toward the end of August. We've talked about a possible PlayStation showcase, I feel like, throughout the whole summer. Ever since E3, we've been theorizing what PlayStation would do, what PlayStation might do. Is there going to be a showcase? Is there going to be a state of play? Now that we're almost in September, Janet Garcia, where are you at with a possible PlayStation showcase?
I don't think it's gonna happen. I think we're just gonna like quietly walk out of the year and into 2022. But if something were to happen, I would see it more as like a setup for 2022. So maybe happening. I still feel like that'd probably be a better thing to happen at the beginning of next year than the end of this year. But I feel like that's totally what it would be because I do think, Deathloop's gonna be at least huge from a like attention standpoint. Again, it's not out yet, so we can't really speculate on how well received it'll be or whatever, but I feel like that's where they're at, where it's like it's time to now gear up. We're punting this year, much like, if y'all have goals that you make in the year and you stick with them a little bit, there's a certain point in the year or the month or whatever your goal setting thing is, where you're like, I'm now going to focus on the future because this is already over. Like, we can't really do much here, but we can like really knock out like future me is going to kill it. And I think that's where PlayStation kind of is.
Yeah, I agree. I would love for there to be some kind of PlayStation showcase this year. I don't think there is going to be. I think for the exact reason of this year is pretty much on lock. They have Deathloop as the exclusive for this year. They have big third-party releases between games like Far Cry and others. I think 2021 is pretty much spoken for, and if PlayStation was to do a showcase, it would be to announce and showcase games that are coming out in 2022, 2023. But we already know that God of War exists. We know that Horizon Forbidden West is around the corner. That's coming out in February. And I think there's enough over the horizon, no pun intended, that, I think a state of play would get PlayStation by. If they were to do, let's say, a state of play in even December-ish if they wanted to, coming off of Game Awards, for example, to talk about Horizon Zero Dawn and maybe the first half of what we can expect from 2022. I think that would get the job done. But at this point, I think I've lost hope in terms of an actual big PlayStation presentation. Here's us announcing the next Spider-Man. Here's us announcing big games. I think even things like PSVR, which PSVR 2, is probably like a late 2022 thing, maybe going into 2023. Even that, I could see them being like, cool, we're going to wait and talk about this on the PlayStation blog when it's ready, or put out a video when it's ready. But I think that for what PlayStation has been doing over the last couple of years for hyping up the PS5 and hyping up its own release slate, I think they've proven that they don't necessarily need a presentation if it isn't something like the PlayStation 5, which they need all hands on deck for, which they need all attention on. I don't think they have anything imminently that needs that.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know that they have enough to really properly fill a showcase at this point. I think God of War is sort of the big question mark, though, your mention of Spider-Man is definitely poignant as well. Like I could see news coming from that really soon, or like not for many years. And I think too, with having Last of Us multiplayer kind of floating in the wind as well. Like there's a world we could create of like they put it all together and they make an ultimate thing. But like, are they going to do that? Like probably not timeline wise.
Yeah. Do they have to is the question, I think, too. Because when we talk about the known quantities, we're talking about Horizon Forbidden West. We're talking about God of War, Ragnarok, and we're talking about Gran Turismo. But then we're talking about unknown quantities that we assume exist in some form, and some that I guess we do know in some form, right? When we talk about Last of Us Factions, we know that exists. We're going to talk about it later in the show, but that is the thing that they're going to want to announce sooner or later, but they can wait on announcing, right? A multiplayer game is something that you can announce the year of and drum up hype in the lead up to it. You have something like Spider-Man or whatever Insomniac is working on next, right? That is something that you can announce, but that is something that you're probably announcing as something that's far flung. Do you need to announce a Spider-Man when you have God of War still on the precipice? Probably not, because God of War is holding it down in terms of PlayStation hype for the future. But then you also have other things, right? When are we getting the next Ghost of Tsushima, right? When are we getting the next big game from a lot of your big studios? Some of those are probably years down the line, so you got to kind of manage when and how you announce those things. And I don't think PlayStation with the PS5 is in a place right now where they feel like they have to announce right now big things that are coming out years from now, right? I think the plan right now is to focus in on what they have going, and maybe post Horizon Forbidden West, then it is all focus in on God of War and maybe a few other games there. Maybe it is Last of Us Factions and God of War being the thing they're talking about mainly next year.
Yeah, I definitely think they're, at least from this year, take a more zoomed in approach of like, hey, we have our 1 or 2 marquee games and we'll do state of plays specifically diving into those things. Again, I could see them doing eventually like something that's VR specific as the most generalized thing, but it's been a while since there's been like an all-encompassing thing. I don't think they necessarily need it, but I would really like to see it. I mean, even looking back on like what Xbox did at E3, like though there was nothing like entirely groundbreaking from that presentation, it just felt kind of cool to see all the offerings sort of slated and packaged, and like it was nice to kind of get that messaging from like a fan perspective. And I'd love to see that on the PlayStation end, but I think if we do see that, it would be next year, hopefully, because I think it's nice to have a more holistic picture and sort of see like what is the vision of PlayStation for a given year rather than just highlighting these 1 or 2 marquee games. But we'll see.
Yeah, it's nice to have a wider idea of what the PlayStation slate is, because you do have games like Stray that was announced at the PlayStation presentation that people are hyped for. You have Ghostwire Tokyo. You have plenty of other games that are third party. You have games that you're partnered with, right, that you're developing. You have Deviation Studios and Firewalk Studios. You have a lot of projects that you got going that you can probably talk about at this point, but and when you compare it to Xbox, right? Like I think that's what's painted such a strong fall for Xbox is the fact that you look at 12 minutes, you look at Psychonauts 2, you look at Death's Door, and we paint these all as Xbox games because Xbox has done a good job of actually owning that message and promoting these games and associating with the platform. I think I could see an outlet like a State of Play where PlayStation does the same thing, but Janet will have to wait and see. For now, let me remind you that this is PS I Love You XOXO, your PlayStation podcast. Each and every week we join you to talk about the biggest topics in PlayStation. If you like that, you can watch it live right here as we record on patreon.com/kindoffunnygames, or you can watch it Tuesday when it posts for everyone on youtube.com/kindoffunnygames and on podcast services around the globe. Housekeeping for you. This Thursday, you're getting a new episode of The Blessing Show that's going live at 7 a.m. Pacific time with a YouTube premiere on youtube.com/kindoffunnygames. And again, I can't tell you what that episode's about. All I can say is that it's a big episode, so look out for it. Thank you to our Patreon producers, Julian, the gluten-free gamer, James Hastings, Casey Andrew, Elliot, and Brian Ward. Today we're brought to you by ExpressVPN, HelloFresh, and Native, but I'll tell you about that later. For now, let's begin with topic of the show. It's fun doing the show and instead of Kind of Funny Games Daily because I'm so used to hosting KFGD that I try to do the transitions that I know for KFGD and I try to translate them to this show. And sometimes I slip up, sometimes I absolutely kill it. All right. Now listen, everybody. We got a topic of the show. It's a different one. We got a preview that we're doing for Far Cry 6. Janet, you've played Far Cry 6. Greg Miller has played Far Cry 6. And we recorded a preview earlier where we all got to sit down and talk about it. Since Greg Miller is out this week, we recorded it. We pre-recorded it. We're going to stitch it in here. So I don't think I have to do much intro for this one. I think everybody kind of has a clear picture of what this is. And so, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, here is your Far Cry 6 preview. What's up? Welcome to our Far Cry 6 preview. I'm Blessing. That's Greg Miller. That's Janet Garcia. And Greg and Janet have both gotten their hands on Far Cry 6. Isn't that correct?
That's correct, Blessing.
Greg, where do you want to start?
You'll kick it to no one. You'll just kick it all right out into the middle of the room, see what happens with it.
See who catches it.
How's the show going? So I'm not on this week. Is it going pretty well? You having a good time?
You know what? I mean, I assume it's going great. I mean, we're
agree.
recording this before we record the actual show itself. And
Sure.
so I'm sure Future, me, and Janet are killing it right now.
Do you have a mustache, Future Blessing?
No, because I can't grow a mustache. I've tried.
Well, maybe you should try for a week and see what happens. Janet, we both played Far Cry 6, and I want to start right at the top. Did you enjoy it?
Yes, I did.
Okay, excellent. That's good. That's a wrap, everybody.
What about you?
Yeah, I did. I think it's weird when you talk about Far Cry 6 and you talk about the sixth installment of a game, which of course is cheating because there's been the spin-offs and everything else. I think there's so much to talk about in terms of your history with it, right? And so I always go back to, Far Cry 3 was the Far Cry for me. That was the entry point. That was, at IGN, Mitch Dyer was reviewing it, pulled us all into a room. He's like, yo, I know it's not everybody's going to get to play this by the time the year ends. For Game of the Year discussion, people need to look at this. And he ran through and talked about shark skin wallets and all this stuff. And I was like, whatever. And then I played it in January and it was way too late. And I was like, damn, I was wrong. I really should have played that in December and got obsessed and played a ton of it. Right. And so then Far Cry 4 came around. Right. And I played it and I like Pagan Min as fine as a villain or whatever, but it didn't hit the same way. And then Primal was after that, right? I didn't even care about Primal because I didn't want to go Primal. Far Cry 5 came and was saying a lot of good stuff. When I got my hands on it, I was like, this is just kind of generic. And I had a huge problem with being in the open world and the open world constantly trying to kick my fucking teeth in. Like I couldn't go 4 feet without a turkey getting me or an enemy brigade of people in a van coming to get me. And so it's
funny because I would say that is my exact trajectory with Far Cry as well. Where Far Cry 3, I had an absolute blast with. I absolutely adore Far Cry 3. But then Far Cry 4 was that gradual, gradual steady decline of Far Cry 4. I was like, oh, this is fine. I don't love it as much as Far Cry 3, but it's more Far Cry. I'm not mad at more Far Cry. Far Cry Primal, I just didn't even try out because the premise, I didn't really care. I didn't want to go back in time like that. Far Cry 5, I got excited for during that marketing run up to it. But when I finally got my hands on the game, I was super disappointed. And it was the same thing as well, where I just didn't like driving around the map and getting shot up and just wanting to go do my next objective or next mission or take over the next camp and feeling like I'm being stopped at every single moment. And at a certain point for me too, Far Cry always just felt like more Far Cry. It never felt like innovative Far Cry, which I guess is my question. You let off saying that you guys enjoy this demo. Is it just more Far Cry or does it feel like a next step for Far Cry?
Janet, you go.
Well, the funny thing is, this is my first Far Cry, so
what?
I don't have.
Oh.
Yes, I know, but I have this weird track record of like previews being the entry point into my series because I was the same way with Watch Dogs, where like I previewed that game and then played it, and that was my first full Watch Dogs game. Though for that one, I like went super extra and like played some of the old one to prepare to preview the next one because I have like an intense personality.
Sure.
But for this one, like I went in and I just kind of like as an outsider, my perspective of Far Cry is like it's Ubisoft formulaic. Sometimes they're really fire. Usually they're just okay, but you like blow a lot of stuff up and they're sort of like in that shocky value in a sense, and like that they're a little bit bro-y for lack of a better term. So I went into this kind of like, I don't know what to expect or how much I'm going to like it. Obviously, it also leans like heavy into being a shooter, which I don't traditionally play, but I went in with an open mind and I had a really good time with it. Though I can't really speak to, again, if it's more of the same or how much it deviates. But yeah, Greg, what was your read on how it lands in the series?
So that's the thing, to get to the end of the long walk I was taking you on, this is probably the most excited I've been for a Far Cry since I wasn't even excited, I guess, when Mitch pitched me 3, right? It took time. Like in my playing of Far Cry, this would be the most excited I have with Concrete. I think, the Far Cry 5, oh, you're going to be in America. I was excited about that, but that was before I really played it and got a sense of it. I spent, I did 3.5 hours. I was late to the demo. Sorry, Ubisoft. I was late to the demo on this one. So I played 3.5 hours, and it is that thing where, and this is funny, again, for where we are right now in terms of recording this before I leave, but it'll post after I leave. I've been playing Deathloop and having a great time with Deathloop, which we talked about last week on PS I Love You XOXO. And one of the things is, like, even playing Deathloop, there's times where I'm like, Deathloop, a thinking game. Like, what goes on here? How do I want to approach the situation? There's times where I'm like, man, I could go for Far Cry 6 right now. I could go for clicking over, and not that you don't think, but you think in the terms of, do I want to go loud or do I want to stealth in? Do I want to use this gun or do I want to use that gun? Far Cry 6 is a ton of fun, and I think where it succeeds for me, because, bless your question again, sorry, I'm getting away from the point. Is this a major step forward for Far Cry? Does this reinvent the wheel? Does it do anything like that? No, but it does the things I want Far Cry to do, if that makes sense. Where for me, Far Cry, especially when you the lead up to this, where they've been so clear about how important Giancarlo Esposito is, right? And how his character is. And we've seen it before. Obviously, you bring in a great Far Cry villain, but you barely use them. Or they bring in a video game, brings in a big name, and they barely use them. Far Cry 6 so far, again, on 3.5 hours of content, is delivering on giving a great villain who's involved with the story, whose motivations are completely fucked up, but I think are really interesting, especially on a world stage. And then most importantly, you play as Danny, and you can be either a male Danny or a female Danny. I was playing as a female Danny. Gives Danny a cast of characters that I actually like, that I actually want to spend more time with, that I enjoy the Far Cry-ness of them. You know what I mean? It opens, obviously, with this very serious story and all this horrible stuff. And we've been asked not to spoil it, which I won't, but I think the intro is great. I wasn't talking to you. I wasn't talking to you, Siri. It comes out, a great intro that is very serious and very grounded in doing that, but not to the point that when you get to the actual action, you feel that narrative disconnect that Far Cry so often does. It is there. It is very much that there's a serious thing going on, and then 2 hours in,
explosions.
Juan Cortez is like, also, here's the Supremo. It's a rocket launcher backpack you wear that the more you kill, you fill in, you use your shoulder buttons to launch. And it's like, yeah, that's Far Cry. That's the ridiculous nature of Far Cry, but I'm still in it. That's not breaking it, because I like Juan so much already. Like, I like this guerrilla fighter that's, this seasoned guerrilla fighter who's come on with his alligator guapo.
What really helps to try to, lower the amount of disconnect, because there always will inherently be some disconnect with just the fact that this is pulling on, theoretical lived experiences that people have had in the world and then mashing it up with a wild playground. And that's always going to be a little bit at odds with itself. But for me, back to the gruesomeness, that was my first initial takeaway. I'm like, oh, this game's brutal. Not only narratively, because it's dealing with really heavy issues and you see a lot of violence inflicted on people, but then when you jump into the action, one of the first things that you do is you have a machete and you do a melee kill, and the camera, because it's first person and everything, the camera work, it's so gruesome. I'm like, oh, they're going for it here. And then the next thing I did a few seconds after that was I had to heal. But the way I healed was I stuck my hand out in front of my face and I cracked my finger back into place. And I'm just like, oh man, this is gonna be if you're into that kind of stuff, you're in for a treat. If you're kind of maybe squeamish on it, it might be a little too much for you. But I'm someone that does enjoy that, in certain settings. So I really got a kick out of it. But it was definitely my first immediate takeaway was this is a gruesome story and a gruesome game in its mechanics.
Yeah, it's that you're right there with it, Janet. Right, where I think you are Danny for all intents and purposes is a normal person leading into this, right? And then the first machete kill when I kind of forgot. You're playing, you're like, oh yeah, it's Far Cry, whatever. And then machete kill through the chest and slit the throat,
through the skull and the head.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
whoa,
this is where we're going. Yeah, right. And it's it is that balancing
it's
act
10
that,
in the morning.
you know, Far Cry is this triple, and I'm not trying to give an excuse or a pass by any stretch of the imagination, but it is this AAA blockbuster action movie, and it does that thing, but it can go personally, I feel, and this is obviously such a hard line to walk. It can go personally one way or the other, where it's like in Far Cry 5, when it was that, oh, and then there was this, you know, I went to whoever Janie's bar or whatever, and her guy sweeping the floor was clearly Steven Seagal, and there was a monster truck I drove outside, and I was just like, this doesn't feel right at all. Like, I think Yara, you know, first off, which is humongous. Like, the thing starts and we had a small island, and like I did the zoom out and I was like, oh, I'm gonna go to that shore, of course. The second half of the demo was playing co-op with a Ubisoft demoer, and we had the entire map, and it is ginormous. Like, Yara as a country is so fucking huge. But Yara also is beautiful. Like, I really think it's gorgeous. The colors, the greens, the browns, it makes it feel like you are in this island nation, right? The way they have the color seep into it, the way they use light, the way, you know, rather than have there are cars to drive around, but you know, I started off in the game on horseback, and I honestly feel like I'll probably be doing horseback the entire way, because it was just made more sense for me from a first person perspective than the car when you're inside it. I never do it. I enjoyed it, but even right now, as you see it, if you're a visual watcher, the way the sun goes through, the way it looks, like in motion, Far Cry looks great. It feels great. Like, the guns feel great, and this is all stuff that Far Cry, I would say, before this, you would have known if you've played before, right? But again, it's, for me, it's always this weird thing of watching all the levels go up and down, all these variables, go up and down on what you like. Yeah, sure, the gunplay is going to be great, but the stories and characters seem down here. The fact that they're all up on this one, I'm excited to play more of this, get my hands on it. Yeah.
Now, I got a lot of questions because you guys just covered a lot right there. I guess coming off of what we just talked about, how does it handle tone? Because the thing you guys just mentioned was about how, you know, you have Giancarlo Esposito playing a villain, and he's usually known for playing these dramatic roles and playing these villains that are terrifying, right? When I think of Gus from Breaking Bad, or when I think of plenty of his villains from plenty of other things he's in, you have that, but then you also have a story that is rooted in a lot of politics and a lot of actual, like, real shit that people are actually actively dealing with. I know when we talk about politics in Ubisoft games, that is always a big topic conversation in terms of, are you saying something? How are you saying a thing? And also, how does that fit in with all the violence and chaos that's happening? When you're talking about Far Cry 6, you know, you just mentioned the big explosive weapon that has like this weird, goofy, ridiculous gimmick to it. Does the tone of the story tie that stuff together well? Like, are they playing a lot of jokes? I know you have a crocodile companion that you can have. Like, does that all feel like it's part of the same experience, or does it still feel like they are pieces that are duct taped together that we just accept because it's a video game?
I feel like it's heavy-handed on both ends of what composes the game, which is to say, like, the narrative, in a sense. Well, see, it's difficult because I don't want to act like, oh, these things never happen, like, in the world, because obviously they do. But when I say heavy-handed, I mean they're going for, like, the evil guys are evil, and we're gonna make it, like, really extreme. Like, they're medicine that could heal people. They're just, like, forcing, you know, they're enslaving people to make it and then sell it for like, they kind of really lay on thick on the whole, like, corporatization, and, you know, like, it's all of the evils are very, like, clear cut in a way that, like, I guess removes you needing to have critical thought at looking, like, at a political situation versus, like, in the real world. They don't worry too much
about nuance.
In the real world, there's a lot more gray, or, you know, a lot of the violence that exists in the real world is a lot more coded or hidden. You could argue that you can see it more because you're, like, within the marginalized group. But I would say going into this, I had those same concerns and I'm still a little worried about that playing the game. This didn't really help or hurt either way. I did enjoy the story more than I expected, especially with, like, that opening scene. I thought it was really well done. But there is one instance that did stick out to me where, you know, a lot of it's like you have, like, this militia group and, like, these, you know, guerreros, and, like, they're trying to, like, you know, or the guerrilla, you know, and all that. And, like, they're trying to, like, start this revolution, and it's, like, very extreme. Like, you know, we're against this, and we have, like, the craziest fucking weapons because that's what this requires, and we'll do whatever it takes. And, like, I live for causing anarchy for the people, and, like, that's kind of the ethos of, like, the good guys or the different groups. But then there's also, like, a few times where it's like, maybe that line, like, was too far, or, like, was a little weird. Like, one line that stuck out to me was somebody was like, oh, like, take this weapon, like, you can commit high velocity war crimes, was the line. And I'm like, ooh, maybe that shouldn't have made the final edit. And I don't know how many of those instances will be there, but that was the only thing that I had written down where I'm like, oh, this is like a little uncomfortable, but everything else felt like, sure, it is kind of extreme in what it's doing, but it didn't hit me a certain way or the other than that one line.
Yeah, and obviously, from a short time, it's impossible to figure out how it would play out. But I'm with Janet that it is heavy-handed, I think, on both ends. But I think that actually leads to balance in a way where, one of the main things with any open world video game, it's always the joke, right? Of like, all right, cool, I got to save the world, but I also got to collect all these pelicans over here. You know what I mean? Like, blah, blah. And obviously that's going to still exist in Far Cry, I'm sure, when you get in there and I'm playing it for 900 hours or whatever it'll be. But I do appreciate that you're immediately indoctrinated into this rebel guerrilla group, right? And they are very clear from the beginning what they're off. We want free and fair elections. We want the Castillos removed from power. Yeah, like they give you this mantra, right? And then everything you do is framed around that and what's going on with it and why you're doing it. Like I felt like that was realistic, right? Especially in the early parts, Danny's actually just trying to get out. And the person she's working with there, Clara, is giving her, okay, cool, but you got to earn your keep kind of thing. And then that escalates a bit more as you obviously play the game and things go on. And so I do feel, yeah, it is it is black and white night. Here's what's right. Here's what's wrong. Mm-hmm. The interesting thing, and we've seen it teased before from the E3 cutscene, right? Of Giancarlo. I screwed up every time. Coming down into the boat, right, and delivering this speech about fishing, and then his son's on the Diego, his son in the game, is on the boat or whatever. Like that's interesting. I think there's going to be something to play with there. Of it is very clear that this character of Castillo, like the dictator, right? He talks about his father, right? And so it is this, the family tree and, nurturing versus nature and stuff like that. And to see how that's going to net out with his son as the game goes on, I think will be interesting. But it is very clear that he's the bad guy. You're the good guys. Here's what we're going to go do to stop the bad guys and, try to get Yara back for the people, right? To overthrow this regime that's been sitting on our neck for so long.
So how
I will say too, like,
I go for it. Yeah, I'm about to turn the car.
I just have this like really like quick line for another line that did stand out to me that I almost forgot was like, as far as leaning into, I guess, the more nuanced or intriguing part of the political element, Greg mentioned like Danny just kind of wanting to get out and like get out of this whole situation. And like early on in the story, like she talks about wanting to go to America, and someone says America doesn't want people that like look like you, basically. And I just thought, I was like, damn, like, it was just interesting to see a more nuanced and real conversation taking place, even in the midst of something that is, ultimately a playground for you to burn things and explode things and sort of have fun with those mechanics. But it was nice seeing a little bit of that. And I do think in some of the character treatment, there's like they are archetypal characters, kind of like there's like one character that is very like Sully-esque in a way. And I'm like, that's fine, because like I'm down for that. Like they have those little moments. And I think those are going to be like where the strengths lie narratively, more so than maybe making, a super meaningful statement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, I think that nets back into like what you're doing and why you're doing it and how this character is, because that's always the thing of like, Far Cry's before, like, I'm on a cool vacation with my friends and now I need to murder 3 million people. And not that like for Danny's transition's any easier, but the conversation you're talking with Clara, even for me, right? Of like, she's like what, when you get out of here, what are you going to do? Oh, we're going to work shit jobs until we can get enough money to start a body shop. And she's like, yeah, the American dream isn't for people who are a color. She literally says, I'm paraphrasing a bit, but the color part is in there, right? Like, you're gonna work and stock shelves, but like you're not gonna be able to make it. Like, you stay here and help us do something for us. You know what I mean? Do something for Yara, which I think is a powerful message.
How's Giancarlo Esposito in it? Like Greg, you mentioned earlier
fucking
that
crushes
he feels
he's really fucking
involved.
good. He's killing it.
God, I love this guy, and that's again the balance part of it, right? Where it's like, I think not that I'm gonna sit here and be like, man, Pagan Min or Voss, thank you very much, from Far Cry 3, or even the weird preacher dude, right, from the last one. None of these are all subdued villains, right? But it's like Giancarlo Esposito is walking this line where he's subdued in the way that like he's a dictator or whatever, but like the power is how he always is in these roles, right? Where it is that he's out there speaking, you don't know what he's going to do next, and that is like so captivating to watch. Yeah,
he's the kind of dude that'll blow your head off, but you wouldn't be able to tell that just by looking at him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, he's like quiet scary, which is like he plays that character a lot, but he plays the character well. So it's like, okay, this is cool. And like, I think cinematically they do, at least like from, again, I didn't see like that many narrative beats, nor would I mention them if I did, but like it's like, you know, it's like it's quiet and it's like tense and you know like stuff's about to go down, but also like he's like a ruthless murderer, so obviously he's gonna like kill everybody, but first he's gonna just like he's gonna be like saying this really good speech and you're gonna be very enthralled, and then everyone's
He'll talk
dead.
to you like a dad talking to his disappointed son. He'll leave you like a
well,
lecture.
yeah, he literally has a disappointing son, so it's like it's all set up for him to thrive. So I am interested though to see, you know, in the I want to say it was like the opening, it was like the Summer Games Fest thing that like Keighley did during E3 when they interviewed Giancarlo. And like was talking about him playing the villain, and he mentioned something weird like, oh, well, like, is he the villain? You'll have to find out. Like, is he gonna have some redeeming quality, or is Giancarlo in real life just like a little bit evil?
That's him leaning into the role.
I was really confused.
I think it's the normal thing, right? Of like, oh, you know, villains are always the good guys in their story, right? And here we see this scene at the end. This is from the end of my demo, right, where one of your compatriots has been captured or whatever, and it is that, you know, here he's trying to get his son Diego to do it, right? And again, Diego has that push and pull, that angel devil thing, which, you know, might be obviously trite or hackneyed in some degree, but like I am interested to see how it nets out, right? His father keeps pushing on him, and clearly he's been pushing on him his entire life. What is that actually going to end up being in the game?
Cool. I still have a bunch of questions.
Please go.
So yeah, how did you guys get to experience like the hub areas at all? I know there are some areas where they added third person. Did you guys get to? Okay, you guys have. How was that? Like, did third person add anything?
It just made it easier to walk around the area, like, and it was kind of weird to be honest. But Greg, what's your read on it?
I'm right there with you. I was like, this is disorienting. When it happened, I was like, is something wrong to the demo? He's like, no, like it's multiplayer. I think, and I might be speaking out of turn. I think it's only multiplayer when you see it in third person in those hub areas, but I'm not sure. And he was like, well, no, like it's done to show your gear, which almost is a different
in single player actually.
Oh, you did?
So
okay,
it's definitely
okay.
Yes. I think it might just be only certain hub areas though, because one of the first hub areas you go to, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, I didn't see it in mine, right? And then
but in the one I did, like we kind of did the beginning part of the game, and then they jumped you ahead to like a later part, so you could see, oh, what's it like when you actually have like a lot of weapons and like you're more powerful and you have like more of the area, and that's when it occurred. But yeah,
Garrett's showing it right now.
Like,
for me, I mean, you look at it right now on the screen, and like it gives me, not in a good way, not that I don't know if there is good ways, Fallout 76 third person feelings, right? Of like, what does it look like? Like, why does it look like? What am I doing? And it's, you know, the idea is, I think in co-op it's weird. When the idea from what I got is like, oh, it's, you know, kind of to look at yourself and look at your outfit, because just to take a step back, regardless of this third person thing, which apparently is, you know, just going to be hub world, so who cares? Gear is a big deal this time in Far Cry, which is a new thing for it, where it is this thing of when you go into your gear menu, your inventory menu, and you go to select stuff, there's right now obviously a million grayed out options, but there are a bunch of options there. And what happens, Bless, is that there's different perks applied to it, right? So I think in the presentation, one of the things they were like, if you're going to be a sniper, or if you just want to go on this mission to be a sniper, right? Like you can apply X, Y, and Z, and it'll, you know, increase your precision, make your hand sway less. I'm first off totally making up both of those. It makes you a better sniper. I forget what the buff was about it. A more concrete example would be in this demo. At one point, they're like, cool, we got to go burn these fields of the plant they're using to make their drug or whatever, right?
Do they have that in every Far Cry game? Because I swear, that's like, I've done that multiple times now.
They do, but this time it's different.
The barrels instead.
This time I don't want to go into it because of how the drug's used in the game or whatever, but it's different than normal, where it's just like, burn the fucking marijuana. Like, this is a different one.
Okay.
But anyways, you go and burn it this time, but when you do, they're like, all right, cool, here's some like fire equipment for it. And so you get like a scarecrow ass looking mask that'll make you invulnerable to the gas or the, you know, what's being burned. And then also it gives you these Enfuego gloves that when you're wearing them will automatically put out fire. So you don't have to worry about like stop, drop, roll kind of thing, right? Like there's those kind of buffs applied to this. So again, to what Far Cry always has been, which is, you know, Bless, you know, cool, I'm coming up on an encampment, a radio tower or whatever. What do I want to use? How do I want to do it? Am I, you know, blah, 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 blah. It's an escalation of that choice where it is now, okay, cool. You want to go in there and burn it. You want to be the most efficient fire breathing character possible, put on all this stuff, right? And so I think they put an emphasis on gear that way, and then they were like, cool, and then we'll let you see it, because I think that, you know, there's been outfits before in Far Cry, and then when I did it, I was immediately like, I don't need to see this. This is weird to run around in third person.
So then does it feel like a Destiny gear loot system where you are like, you press the pause menu, you're equipping like a different torso, a different, like, I don't know, man, like sniper pants or something like that? Like, is it like that, or does it make more sense to that? And then does that also get you more interested in the gunplay?
I didn't find myself changing as often as I think what you're suggesting would involve. But it was more so because like sometimes there are missions, like the fire one is a very good example, where it's like, and that's kind of where they're teaching you like, hey, notice how you can use this for like certain things. But since most missions aren't really, or at least the missions I had played didn't feel that specific, they were a lot more about like taking over an encampment in one form or the other, or like getting to find one person or something. I kind of focus more on like the gunplay element of them. It does get me invested in it only because that's the main way you can grow your character. Like you don't have like statistics in the regular sense. And then one interesting thing about the cosmetics that I really like, even though it's first person, so you're almost never going to see what you're wearing, but I'm shallow, so I still care about what I'm wearing. And they'll let you pick, if you pick like the Infuego gloves or something like that, but you think they look ugly, you can take the cosmetics of any other item for any other glove. So you get to mix and match them. Yes, which is great because like in games where you can't do that, I end up looking stupid as hell. Yeah. So I just think that's like a pretty cool touch. And then one thing that kind of struck me as
hold on, can I, before you go a little bit further with it, just to answer Bless's question, I don't think it's what you're talking about with a Destiny kind of thing, or like, you know, even having loadouts for your different characters in Marvel's Avengers. What's up, everybody? I think it's more, again, like we talked last week about Deathloop. It's more the idea that like, how do you want to play the game? Are you going to be using the flamethrower all the time and then you're worrying about getting burned? You go that way. Are you going to be sniping all the time?
It's not about like making the numbers go up. It's more so about equipping yourself to do a specific kind of task that you want to do.
I think it's how do you play the game? Yeah, and clearly this build or this build or that thing will do better to help you out with how you want to go tackle all the situations.
Gotcha.
Sorry, now Janet, back to you.
Yeah, I was just gonna say one thing that I thought was a little bit odd. So back to the whole like you can choose how you play, whether you're gonna go in like guns a-blazing or go in like more stealthy. You have this phone where you can kind of zoom in and like mark different enemies, and when you do that, it'll tell you like what kind of bullet the enemy's weak against and what kind of bullet they're shooting. And like at least early on, the bullets were like armor piercing or like body piercing, like soft bullet or something. I don't know. It's like one's good against like people that don't have any armor. One's good against armor, and they had like one that poisons you, and like maybe a few others. And it's just kind of odd because like there's almost always at least a few different types of enemies in an encampment. So I'm like, well, I mean, I guess and you can always like mix and match. Like, oh, this one gun I'm gonna put armor piercing. This other one, but it just felt like. So you do that at a workbench, and they have workbenches all over this game. Like you're never really going to be in need of a bench. They're everywhere strategically next to where you have your missions. But it just felt like it was expecting me to do a lot of like pausing and respecting and like almost too much strategy, even for if you wanted to go in strategic. So I wasn't really a big fan of like the bullet element. And then I feel like it didn't really make any sense because like common sense, wouldn't an armor piercing bullet do more damage against anybody? Like, why do I need the skin one when you're not wearing armor? Like, wouldn't the armor one, if it's powerful enough to go through the armor and the body, can I just use the armor one? So that was one thing that I wasn't really a huge fan of.
I'm with you on everything you're saying in terms of like, okay, but what about like the extrapolation I took away from it, right, is like Blessing, crafting tables are everywhere, but they're calling them resolver now, right? Or these resolver tables. And so as you go through, you're picking up screws and glue or whatever that you can then go back and obviously apply to this stuff. And then when you do that, you can go in and put attachments and mods on your guns and then ammo types like Janet's talking about. And so, again, my takeaway from it was that you're going to come down to you have the like first off for armor piercing bullets, right? You're eventually gonna run out of ammo, even though I didn't. I'm sure you didn't either for the most part in this thing, right? Like I think it's more the idea of giving you a reason to switch your weapons. Of oh man, I don't want to use up all my armor piercing on this guy who's in nothing, so I'll use whatever other gun I have on this idea of it. That's what I took away from it. And since it's so early, I don't think it matters. But I'm guessing with a map that big, we're gonna get into things that there's a poison immunity, there's a electricity bullet. I don't know that, you know what I mean? But that's the reasoning. Right now, I was with you of like this seems like it's a bit overcomplicated for what I'm trying to do, but we'll see what it is 10 hours into the game.
So how's getting around the map? Because you mentioned earlier that the map is huge, and I saw in the footage earlier that there was a scene of you. It looked like you were riding on a horse, which seems pretty cool and pretty different. Because for me, playing Far Cry 5 and playing the Far Cry games before, driving was one of my least favorite things to do in those games. Like especially because it is first person. It is like you might crash into another car that's trying to kill you, and that'll set your car on fire. And maybe sometimes you have to repair your car. There's like a lot that goes into the driving in those games. Do you feel that playing Far Cry 6, you felt like you were more enabled to get around because the map is so big?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, hard to say because it's so early. What I would say is I'm right there with you. I've always hated driving in the Far Cry games. I just don't think it feels good first person. And so the horse I thought was such a great addition where it was like, cool, it's easier to corner. I understand what's going on. I'm enjoying this more. When they did introduce the car later on, it was fine, but it was the same thing from the little bit I played with it. However, getting on the map, I had no problem with. And it goes, I think, both not pro and con, but like I'm an idiot of I've been playing so many different games, I guess, recently where it was like, cool, I did the thing, I destroyed whatever I was supposed to destroy, I climb back on my horse and I start riding. And I'm like, the things across the map, very similar to what you're seeing here. I gotta get it all the way across the map. And I'm riding and I'm having a good time riding. And then I was like, wait a second. And I stopped and I went to the map and I could fast travel right to that location. Because like your main hub world there that you see right there, that blue dot, you can fast travel to. One of the things is I took over, an outpost gas station or whatever. Once you take that over, you can fast travel to that too. So you can fast travel really easily to then get where you need to go. And when you go to a location that is, a guerrilla base or whatever, there's horses waiting for you, so you can get right on and go.
Awesome.
Yeah, you can also summon your car at a certain point.
Yeah, you do. In this demo, we got that.
There's some like aerial traversal options as well. Like, I don't know, Greg, how much you played with any of that?
So the helicopter, the parachute, and then the wingsuit.
Yes, I was like I was pretty sure we were able to talk about like anything in there. Yeah, like I thought that was pretty cool because it just kind of, if you get sort of too lazy, or you're somewhere that you're not on a proper road, or you're not by, because there's also like there's a bunch of little like horse outposts where you can just walk up and like summon a horse there and they'll just appear, like it's fine, or like call your caller. But if you're not on a main road, then like that might not be the best option for you. So I spent like a lot of time when I got into the bigger open world just like jumping off of like a ledge and then putting on a wingsuit and flying around like a squirrel. Yeah. Or like, parachuting around just to get into the main road. Then from there, I'd call a horse or something. I will say in general, like just in first person, even riding the horse, it's a little awkward. Like it's not my favorite like animation to stare at. But you can just do the auto drive or auto horse ride. I don't know what the verb for that would be. And that's what I usually did, honestly. Maybe that's like a little bit less fun, but I just want to get to where I'm going. So I don't really
as somebody
mind
who's just
that.
hated cars forever in Far Cry, I'm excited there's another option that doesn't feel as terrible to me personally, right?
Why didn't they put the third person option for driving?
I don't know.
Like,
Why? You're
opened
asking
the menu,
question
I'm
I've
like,
been
this
asking
has
for
to be
3
where it
games. I've always wondered this. I'm like, just let me drive in third person. I hate driving in first person so much in this game.
The parachute and wingsuit, super fun. Yeah, as always. I think they've all been there before, but
I'm pretty sure they've all been there.
If you're up high and jumping off and doing stuff, and that was the same thing when we were doing a co-op, right? It was like, hijack, we needed to get a helicopter, and so then I'm flying low to avoid anti-air missiles, but then take it up high and jump out. And like there was one part, I think even in this demo, where I jumped off something, landed stealthily like into the things, ran up, snapped the guy's neck. Like that just feels cool. That just feels good for what I'm doing.
I assume the upgrade and hunting system is the same, where you're hunting certain animals to level up your wallet or level up your satchel and stuff like that.
It goes into the resolver table, where you're getting both resources there and then stuff you're getting off animals.
Gotcha. And then how is co-op? Do you think co-op is a way that people, if I wanted to play this game with a friend all the way through, is that a viable way to play? Is that a fun way to play?
Has co-op ever done anything for you before?
No.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's that
I was hoping this would be the time.
No, and I can't. And I'm right there with you, where I've tried co-op. I think in every Far Cry game it's had it or whatever. Usually the demo like this, and I walk away with the same experience of like, cool, that was fun, but it's it's the same thing of like, cool, like, and the guy was like, since this was your game, you'd have all the story progress. I'm like, but you wouldn't, right? He's like, no, I mean, I would get, whatever the rewards were we got and stuff I would get. But like, if I went back to I'm like, yeah. So it's like, okay, I'm not going to worry about it.
It's such a bummer to me. I understand that, like, that maybe that's just not their vision. Maybe they do envision this being played single player primarily. And then they give you the option in case you want to play with your friends. Yeah. But I feel like Far Cry would be so cool if they just doubled down and went, oh no, all progress carries. Like, this is basically an Outriders kind of thing.
Yeah.
Maybe in the future, though. Maybe Far Cry 7. Do you guys have any final words?
Final thing, I want to toss out 3 things that I don't remember being in Far Cry before, but again, Far Cry 5, I played a fair bit of it. I just don't remember it. Number 1, you can bribe characters now to get caches on the map. So again, to like, you start with the giant
They don't require much for the bribe either. I was kind of surprised how cheap it was.
Like $5.
Exactly. But it's like it's this goofy little thing that's like I think a nice way of giving you the information, right? To fill your map with like a few caches that you can go out and find. Like you approach these specific guards, but you have to have your weapon holstered, and then you go up and you pay them off, and they do the thing. Also, to my point earlier about like, oh man, I didn't like Far Cry 5 because I was getting attacked all the time. I didn't have that here, and even when you would see people, if your gun was holstered, they weren't really necessarily starting shit with you. They'll be starting shit with NPCs and stuff, depending on what's going on, yada yada yada. And then it's just I found some intel in whatever room for something else I was doing. It wasn't a main objective. Found a map or whatever, and that filled in more stuff on my map too. Like I like that organic environmental. Like here's how we're going to build out your map rather than just ping a radio tower and everything's there.
The game still has you're going to encampments, taking them out strategically, and that'll become a new hub area for you, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Just making sure my favorite Far Cry thing is still in there.
Well, I think they even do it more because there was one for me that was like, oh, like I was just riding and there was this aircraft, anti-aircraft gun, and I went in there and took it out, and I was like, all right, cool. Is it? And I turned to the guy, and on Discord, I was like, do I have to do? He's like, no, this isn't the same kind of takeover thing. This is like something you can just knock off as you go. I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
Awesome. Janet, do you have any final words on Far Cry 6?
This is like a small, like nuanced negative take, but I did think sometimes the barks, like the lines the characters say, like the NPCs, get a little repetitive. Like the amount of times I heard that croc belongs in the water because like your alligator will like hang out while you're like maybe stealthing around or something was a lot. So that element wasn't great, but I will say that like if you like blowing stuff up, you enjoy maybe sometimes doing a little bit more of the strategic thing where you're like marking stuff down and like taking down the security camera and like releasing, animals and things. Like I think they do give you a lot of like fun things to play with. Like if you like that and you are cool with the general Ubisoft formula of like how open world is structured, like I think it's going to be a fun time. So yeah, I was pleasantly surprised.
Hell yeah. I guess my last question, how is the alligator? How are the companions?
Oh God, chorizo.
I only really use the alligator that much. I didn't use what's the name of the other one?
Chorizo.
Yeah, I didn't use him that much. The alligator is dope though. I like the alligator a lot, and I'm like, I think it's also just nice to have like a little bit of additional assistance too, just like while you're getting your bearings or figuring things out, and it's just like a nice little thing to lean back on, and you can pet it. So.
And that's the thing too of like back to this cast of characters where I feel like for Far Cry 5. Right, when you talk about the friends you had, and there was the guy who flew the plane, and then there was a dog there too, and there's some like none of them I cared about. Like Guapo the alligator, immediately I was like, this guy is dope. Even his intro, which I don't want to ruin, is just is funny, but it like fits and it's really cool. And then like, oh, Guapo likes you, like it rolls with you the rest of the way. I'm like, this is dope. Well, it was in multiplayer where chorizo was available, and like of course I'm gonna be a sucker for a wiener dog that can fight for me and like distract people. So. I'm very excited for Far Cry 6, which is something I don't feel like I've said about a Far Cry in a while.
Yeah, you guys got me excited because Far Cry 6 has been one that I've been keeping up with trailers, keeping up with the presentations and the coverage, and have been like, cool, yeah, it seems like more Far Cry, and I'll try it out. I'm not necessarily excited about Far Cry anymore, but you guys have me a little bit excited, and so I'm looking forward to it. That has been your Far Cry 6 preview for PS I Love You XOXO. Back to Blessing and Janet.
This episode is brought to you by Purple. Sometimes it feels like the world's against you getting a good night's sleep, whether it's the heat, anxiety, or your neighbors who like to party on a Tuesday. But a Purple mattress helps you sleep cool and comfortable no matter what the world throws at you. Only Purple mattress has the grid. It's a unique ventilated design that lets air pass through no matter how hot it is outside. I love Purple, and I have for a very long time. I have the Purple pillow that features the grid, and let me tell you, it is the best pillow. It is the only pillow I will ever use going forward because it's always cool. It's always how I want it to be, and I only need one pillow. Used to be a 2-pillow guy, now just one. Purple is comfort reinvented. Right now, you'll get 10% off any order of $200 or more. You can try your Purple mattress risk-free with free shipping and returns, and there's financing available. Purple is comfort reinvented. That's purple.com/kindafunny10, promo code kindafunny10 for 10% off any order of $200 or more. Purple.com/kindafunny10, promo code kindafunny10. Terms apply. Again, that is purple.com/kindafunny10. Use promo code kindafunny10. Next up, Shout out to Fitbod. When you're in a workout rut and bored with your exercise routine, it gets easier to skip a day and quickly get off track. That's why Fitbod made a fitness program that continually adapts to how you're progressing so you stay challenged and motivated to achieve your goals. Their algorithm uses data and analytics to help you build on your last workout to maximize your results. Gia's been doing this. She's been keeping track using Fitbod of all of her health and all of her different progression when it comes to exercise and all that stuff. She's been loving it. She's been looking fantastic. Good for her. Everybody, show her some love. Fitbod workouts are balanced to avoid overworking muscles with varied exercises to keep you sharp, because there's no such thing as a one-size-fits-all workout. Pick up the pace on your fitness journey with Fitbod today, and your future self will thank you. You can get 25% off your membership at fitbod.me/KFgames. That's 25% off at fitbod.me/KFgames. fitbod.me/KFgames. And finally, shout out to Upstart. Do your palms sweat just thinking about your credit card statement? You're not alone. Upstart can help you get back on the right path. Upstart's the fast and easy way to pay off your debt with a personal loan, all online, whether it's paying off credit cards, consolidating high interest debt, or funding personal expenses. Over 500,000 people have used Upstart to get one fixed monthly payment. Upstart knows you're more than just your credit score. That's why they consider your income and current employment to find you a smarter rate for your loan. With a 5-minute online rate check, you can see your rate upfront for loans between $1,000 to $50,000. Find out how Upstart can lower your monthly payments today when you go to upstart.com/kindafunny. That's upstart.com/kindafunny. Don't forget to use this URL to let them know that we sent you. Loan amounts will be determined based on your credit, income, and certain other information provided in your loan application. Go to upstart.com/kindafunny. Upstart.com/kindafunny to find out how Upstart can lower your monthly payments today.
Sick. No, I just pick it up from there.
Yeah, we're gonna keep going. There we go. What's up, kids?
Just keep going. There we go. Janet, thank you so much for giving me your thoughts on Far Cry 6.
You're
Also,
welcome.
thank you, Greg Miller. But I more so thank you, Janet, because Janet is my preferred host. That's right, I said it. Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about your PlayStation updates. Those are your greatest hits of PlayStation news for the week. Let's start off with talking about Naughty Dog. Naughty Dog did an exclusive interview with GameInformer, and I want to do a deep dive. Janet, before I even get into it, did you get a chance to check out this interview?
Yeah, I glanced it over.
Okay, cool. I want to take this chunk by chunk because it is a deep dive. I told people on KFGD earlier today, or yesterday by the time you're listening to this, that they should go check out that interview on GameInformer, read up on it. I want to do a deep dive. I want to take it chunk by chunk because there's quite a bit that Ben Reeves talked to both Neil Druckmann and Evan Wells over there about. I'm going to start off from the beginning of his interview and tackle specific questions. All right, Janet, are you ready?
Yes.
Let's do it. Again, the article is titled Naughty by Nature, Naughty Dog Leadership Reflects on Studio's History. It was written by Ben Reeves at GameInformer. Naughty Dog is one of the most beloved game developers in the industry. Since 1984, the studio has delivered a steady stream of hits, including iconic franchises like Crash Bandicoot, Jak and Daxter, Uncharted, and The Last of Us. But making games isn't getting any easier, so we sat down with Naughty Dog co-presidents Evan Wells and Neil Druckmann to talk about how they're shepherding the legacy of the studio, working to combat work crunch and dealing with harsh criticism. The first question I'm pulling from Ben Reeves is this: do you have any desire to go towards lighter fare or return to your roots to those kid-friendly games? Evan Wells responds, if we had endless resources and time, it would be super fun to do that. You look at what Insomniac is doing with Ratchet & Clank, and it's exciting. It's great to see stuff like that. We're just limited with time. You know, I'm 48 years old, and how many more games do you get to make? So you got to pick and choose. Neil Druckmann also responds by saying, once we finish a project, we spend quite a bit of time entertaining all sorts of different directions, whether it's going to be something new or if we're going back to some old franchises. We really take our time with it. And if you were to see our folders of concept art, you'd see unused concepts that are all over the gamut. Then we look at everything and we ask ourselves, what are we excited by? What's something that's going to change? What's something that's going to challenge us and push the medium as far as games that can be, because that inspiration is so important to carry through years of production. Ben over at GameInformer also asked, you said that you look up to studios like Insomniac, Guerrilla Games, and Sony Santa Monica. What specifically do you see them doing that inspires you? Neil Druckmann responds, it might be some particular tech like what Gorilla was able to achieve with how dense their foliage is. We looked at that and we talked to them about that. Evan Wells responds, you always come out with something that could do better, even if it's something you adopt directly. So many times you're brainstorming something in the office with your colleagues and you look at something like, quote, yeah, that's just going to be too hard to implement. We can't go down that road, end quote. And then you talk to another studio and you see they've done that very thing or something very similar, and you're like, quote, oh my God. And then they talk about how it's paid off and you're instantly inspired. Evan continues, very, very early on in The Last of Us Part 2 development, we knew that it was going to take place in Seattle. And we knew that Sucker Punch had completely modeled Seattle for infamous Second Son. We said, quote, we're not going to use the assets in the game, but we want to quickly feel out the space. So can we get access to those assets? And they said, sure. They sent it over. We were able to quickly rough out the environment. That was a huge help. Neil Druckmann then responded, another thing that comes to mind when we were talking to Sucker Punch is that we were talking about mocapping a horse for The Last of Us Part 2, and we were looking for ways to do it. And they were like, quote, oh, we're about to do the same thing for Ghost of Tsushima. Let's talk about doubling our efforts, end quote. Motion capture for a big animal is a big deal, and we were able to approach the problem together and use similar data, sometimes the same data, for both games. I'm going to pause there. There's a lot more to get into, but Janet, so far with where we're at, what are your thoughts on the interview?
Jak 4 is dead. That's like the first thought I had. Because it's like, oh, what, would you go back to like those lighter roots? And it's like, it's basically a nice way of saying not really, because, it seems to be like the reading between the lines is that this team, at least these two representatives of this team, feel that pushing the medium forward is in different, genre directions than kind of going back to the past in terms of, platformers, basically. I mean, those are the games that are referenced. So, I mean, that's kind of was known already. I feel like I would be pretty shocked if we ever see a more classic project from Naughty Dog. I think they, have very clearly been going into high cinematic, really like pushing, there's, as much as I think it's a head-ass take to be like, Last of Us 2's like a movie, because I just think it's kind of reductive to compare games to film. I think they're very different mediums, but at the same time, like, I get what people mean when they say they felt like that game transcended the genre that is gaming, because it definitely was a really impactful thing. So that's my first takeaway. And then I just think it's really cool to hear about like the ways studios can work together, and that you can like, sort of work smarter, not harder type situation, where you're not necessarily just taking the exact same thing and putting a reskin on it, but sort of building on design that came before. And I think it's really interesting to think about where you put your energy into as well. Like Wells's comment mentioning, oh, like, this will be too hard and someone else doesn't. It's like, oh shit, like maybe we should have actually put our energies there. So I think that's interesting when we think of like design wise, where the bulk of your energy goes and what ends up paying off, and what kind of, I guess, design groundwork you want to have for your games. It makes me wonder what kind of things are they thinking of for future projects.
Yeah. No, I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of Jak 4 being dead, right? Like them talking about, hey, we look at games like Ratchet and Clank and we're like, yo, that's awesome. But for us, we kind of have to pick and choose based on the fact that, we only have so much time to develop games. And like, I know nowadays games take way longer to develop than maybe during the PS2 era. I think that for them is really saying, hey, we don't have time to make those games. It'd be cool to make whatever game we wanted to, but we kind of have to make what's best for us, which of course is something you got to respect, especially if this is what they want to do, if this is their creative vision with it. Another thing I do want to shout out here too is them talking about collaborating with other studios, because that's a thing that I don't think we talk about as much, and something that we underrate in terms of the power of being brought into a publisher and having the resources of being able to talk to your peers and saying what they do better, right? Like, in what ways can Naughty Dog learn from Sony Santa Monica with what they did with God of War, and vice versa, right? We look at something like God of War 2018 and we see how much that game seemed to be influenced by something like The Last of Us or previous Naughty Dog games. Like, there's that back and forth there that I think is really powerful. And when we talk about games being, or we talk about studios being acquired by PlayStation, right? Like, we look at Housemarque and them being brought into the PlayStation Studios family. That's exciting because Housemarque is a studio that makes awesome games. Housemarque just put out Returnal, which is a game that I love dearly, and it's a game that I'll say is fairly different from the traditional PlayStation Studios formula when we talk about narrative-driven third-person action games. Returnal is that, but it's that in a very interesting way because it's a roguelite and it's going for a certain type of gameplay and all that stuff. now that Housemarque is here, what did they learn from studios like Naughty Dog? What did they learn from Sucker Punch? What did they learn from Guerrilla Games? Very excited to see that, right? And we look at also Death Stranding with Kojima and them going to Guerrilla and using getting the Decima engine for that game, right? Like, there's so many ways that these studios cross-pollinate, and I love getting the example because that's not something I would have put together. The fact that Naughty Dog looked at Ghost of Tsushima and was like, oh shit, like they're doing a thing that we need to do. Let's just mocap this horse together and use the same data for both of our games. Like, that's a really awesome thing.
Returnal 2, horse confirmed. Now I'm just thinking of like silly mashups that don't make sense. Like, they have like really poignant examples of like, you know, mocapping a large animal and like working together on that. And I'm like, okay, Returnal 2, it's now like in a Seattle laundromat.
Oh my God, put every Sony
like
game in Seattle.
I think it'd be fun to, you know, and I'm curious as to like, for hearing this, what kind of design things from games would you want to see like other IPs implement? Like, I have not actually played Death Stranding, so I don't want to misrepresent my experience with Death Stranding. I'm looking forward to playing when the director's cut comes out, but I do know a lot of people were really fascinated with like the sort of online component and like the strand system, and I think stuff like that could be really cool to like see implemented in different IPs. But does anything come to mind of like, I feel like this game did this thing really well, and I'd like to see like, you know, Naughty Dog draw inspiration from that?
I mean, they give a really good example with the foliage in games like Horizon Zero Dawn. Like, for me, that was one of the big things that I really loved in that game. How vibrant it was, how good the foliage and the wildlife stuff was in that game. I guess I think of Death Stranding also when I think of something like foliage. I don't know why foliage is my go-to. I think it's just because that's the example that Neil gave.
Which trees everywhere.
Yeah, but like, you know, the I guess industrial design of that's present in Death Stranding, and that's very much a Kojima Productions thing, and Kojima partnering with Yoji Shinkawa and their whole team to make really good looking industrial design. I guess I'd like to see that implemented in more games, right? If Kojima could lend a hand and be like, yo, you guys want to make a really dope looking futuristic building that's covered in leaves? I got you, bro. Like, I know Kojima isn't PlayStation first party proper, but I think Kojima as a singular lead developer has a lot of good quirky ideas that I would like to see enter the DNA in other PlayStation Studio stuff. Like, even from, hey, this is a more interesting way to shoot a cutscene. Hey, this is a more interesting way to flesh out this character. This is how you make this character stand out, because this character is good already. They have depth, they have personality. What if we added in this X element that turned this character into something that's just a tad bit more interesting? I think Kojima has a lot of those ideas that would work really well. Again, I know it's not PlayStation Studios proper, but again, like, I think that'd be cool. Astro's Playroom with a studio Asobi. I think in terms of, I guess, how they approach making their games vibrant, I would like to see a little bit. I'd like to see what conversations with them and other studios would look like, because I think when I look at Astro's Playroom and I look at Astrobot Rescue Mission, there's a certain life and personality in those games that I really dig. And I guess I would compare it to something like Ratchet and Clank as well, since they're both platformers. But Astrobot, I feel like, has some kind of like X factor in its charm that they capture so well. And I guess I would like to see that translate in ways to like something like Little Big Planet as well, because I think Little Big Planet has a lot of good elements to it. But could you imagine a Little Big Planet game with the charm and like personality of something like Astrobot? I think that would be really
so
cool.
Good, because I feel like, you know, even though I feel like this is my common criticism of a lot of these like ongoing IPs, but I do think Little Big Planet and like Sackboy, now if you want to kind of change the IP over, it's pretty similar, but it has gotten like a little bit stale, right? It's like the first two games, like I remember playing Little Big Planet 1 and 2 like so hard, and when I saw the third one I was like, oh yeah, we're gonna keep going, but then I kind of just didn't really follow through with that, and I think a lot of people sort of tapered off a bit. But I think what Astro does really well, like, as you know, if we want to categorize that as an IP, is it has a playfulness that it captures by integrating a great platforming with a really playful environment. Like, I think it's the way you interact with enemies and the way you interact with like the design of how the levels are constructed, where it's something that I think has only been rivaled by probably like Mario Odyssey, where it's like exploring the area is intriguing, and that's it's semi-rare in a platformer, because I think a lot of platformers get their strength from, you know, the core platforming. Like when I think of Crash 4 being this amazing platforming experience, it's because like the challenge is so tight-knit and interesting, and the areas are really pretty too, but you know, I'm kind of like, either way I'm spinning, like sometimes there's a laser, sometimes there's something else. But in Astros, like the fun is seeing what kind of world am I going to step into? And that's true for Rescue Mission and for Playroom. So I think that's kind of what they do really well, as well as like some really cool like technological integrations, like playing Playroom and being able to like move the DualSense around and kind of ping pong off of things and play with the triggers. Like it's just incredibly playful in a way that I think so few games capture. So yeah, definitely seeing stuff like that transferred over, thinking more of how the environment can enhance gameplay.
And I think, I mean, keeping on Team Asobi, right? They're really good at implementing hardware into the actual game design itself. And that's something that they're good at because they kind of have to do that. Astro's Playroom, the whole point of it is that it's a tech demo of the DualSense and what the PS5 can do. And Astro's Rescue Mission, to some extent, is this thing that was that was more of a full game, but because it is a PlayStation VR game, they had that space to be like, cool, we're going to go all in into designing this game around VR. I would like to see what conversations between them and other studios would look like as a studio that had to do that, right? Like if they talk to, for a random example, right? Let's say they talked to Sucker Punch, and they were like, hey, Sucker Punch was like, hey, we want to hear your guys' thoughts on how you guys were able to use the DualSense to maximize how good your game is. I wonder what the takeaways would be. I wonder if the next Ghost of Tsushima game would have cooler, more interesting DualSense integration. I think there are conversations there to be had that would be really awesome. But I digress. There's more to dive into with this article. Ben over at GameInformer asked about crunch, had a couple of questions about crunch and unionization. So let's get into that. Quote, and this is Ben here. Naughty Dog has such a proven track record, but that hasn't come without cost. Over the years, you've come under fire for studio crunch. Could you speak to your personal experience with crunch and how that's affected your studio? Evan Wells responds, I have definitely personally worked very hard over the years. I think some of that has helped me get to where I am in my career. As a studio, we've all worked hard together, and we are working very hard on every project to find the right balance, just like we do in all of our technical aspects of creating a game. We have postmortems, and we look at how the animation went, and we look at how the design went, and we dig really deep into all the things that could have been better, and the things we got right. We do the same thing with production. We look at how the whole game was created and where we can make improvements and how we can strike the right balance between giving people the opportunity to, as I mentioned earlier, leave their mark on the industry and advance their craft in ways that have never been achieved, but also find space along that spectrum. Ben from GameInformer then asks, one of the things that the industry has talked about as a possible solution is unionization. Do you have thoughts on unionization? Evan Wells responds, I haven't put a lot of thought into that. I don't know if that would be a solution for crunch. To Neil's point about making sure that everybody is able to work as hard or as little as they want, we've got to create an environment that allows that. If we had some sort of restriction where when the clock strikes 40 hours, the servers shut down and you can't work anymore, that would frustrate people to no end. There are people who really want to put in that extra polish on their own volition, and they would feel handcuffed. Neil Druckmann also responds by saying, we've tried some stuff. Like Evan is describing, in the past where we've said, quote, okay, no working past this hour, or, quote, it's mandatory that no one can work on Sunday. And there are always a lot of corner cases of someone saying, quote, well, I couldn't work on Friday because I had to be with my kids. It's actually more convenient for me to come in on Sunday, end quote. When you try to have a silver bullet, like one solution, you're always leaving someone behind. That's why we feel like we need multiple solutions. We have to approach this from multiple angles. Of course, as I said earlier, right? Like I very much encourage people to go check out the full thing. I had to pare down a little bit because there's so much in this interview, and so definitely check out the article for full context. But I pared down the parts that really matter to this. Janet, how do you feel about the response to crunch and unionization?
Oh man, I'm like, it just immediately stresses me out. I'm just like, oh man, the drama. Mm-hmm. But so many things. First of all, I'll be frank. I don't believe Evan Wells when he says I haven't thought about unionization at all. No, this is the first time I'm hearing about. Like, I think that's a little bit of a funny statement. Like, it's such a conversation in the industry. You're telling me you really haven't thought about it at all, even if the thought was like, I don't want it, or I do want it, or whatever your thought is. Like, I don't buy that people exist in game development and don't have any thoughts or opinions on unionization.
Especially exists as co-president. Like it's one thing to be on the employee level and not think about unionization. To some extent, I kind of get that. to be a co-president of Naughty Dog, which is a studio that has had multiple reports from people like Jason Schreier of Bloomberg talking about how crunch is an issue, especially talking about it leading up to The Last of Us Part 2. For you to tell me as a co-president of the studio that you've not thought about unionization either tells me that you're bold-faced lying or that you're not paying attention whatsoever to what anybody is talking about when it comes to your studio. Because that's what the entire conversation has been about when we talk about crunch. Naughty Dog has been one of the big studios that people have been pointing to, and unionization has been the talk of the big solution to a lot of that. And so that is a wild thing to say.
Yeah, but it's smart because no one can really get that mad at it. I mean, we're getting a little,
Oh, trust me, Twitter got mad.
Of it, right? But it's like you can't. If he said he was pro unionization, that'd be like it's really wild. And if he said he wasn't against it, that'd be also very wild. So it's like, oh yeah, are we having cake? I didn't know. Like it just kind of strolled into the room. But the other thing that stood out to me here is Wells's comment of, we've got to create an environment that allows that, in reference to being able to overwork is essentially what he's talking about. I feel like that's worth examining. And I think, in both I can't speak on game development as like a first party because I have not been on game development, but I've been in games media for, 3 years full time. And there's a lot of crunch in the games media side, which I'm sure you can also attest to. And I definitely have heard that. There's a lot of there's so many layers here. I think game development and games media, to different degrees, attract people that are highly driven and people that are willing to overwork. And I think a lot of people who come in through freelance or contractor work or whatever, usually those people are fodder for overworking. Like if you think staff is getting overworked, look at the people who don't have contracts, because they're who we call in when we don't, when staff takes holiday, who's coming in, it's contractors and freelancers. That being said, and again, this is more from like my media perspective, like a lot of us come up through overworking. I started in this industry when I was working my 40-hour teaching job, which also has crunch. So I was crunching for teaching. I was crunching on the side for like reviewing stuff. And in that, a lot of times the people that stand out are the people that are overworking, because, look at how much they did. Look at how fast look at how whatever. And a lot of those compliments are formed on really bad habits. So then when people end up coming into the industry, obviously they're going to keep doing. Why wouldn't I keep overworking? You loved me as someone who overworked. So when I step into, my big time job, I'm going to keep overworking because that's what you know me for. You liked me as an overworker. And then, I've totally met people like throughout this industry who are just like, I just want to touch this thing up. What's the problem? I'm like, well, the problem is that when you're over here touching something up extra hours and I'm not, people always say, like, he makes a statement saying people got to be able to work as little or as much as they want to. But like, who's going to progress forward? It ain't going to be the person who's only putting in the 40 hours, like that's just inherently. Are you telling me that more work is the same as less work in your eyes? You totally respect both equally. Like, I think that's systemically why we end up having so much crunch in at least like the media side of things. And then presumably game development. Again, I'm not a developer. Because people are like, well, what's the problem? Like, no, it is a problem. And you foster a work culture where that is okay, where it is, and the example of like, maybe it's easier for me to do Sunday than Friday. That's totally fair. But I think like saying like, that's why, we can't have people not be able to work all the time, because what if someone needs to? I'm like, well, you can make that accommodation as well. Like, you choose to leave it open in case someone wants to overwork. Like, you give people the option to overwork. And when you do that in an industry that's known for overworking, people are going to do it. So I don't know. That's my reaction.
Yeah. I think saying the response of, there's not a magic answer, right? Like there's not a silver bullet that gets rid of all of that, followed by talking about how you've not considered unionization really. Like that is, for me, that's a back-to-back of what are you talking about? Like what's going on here? I want to pull in an excerpt from an article written by Jason Schreier back in 2020 on the lead up to Last of Us Part 2. He wrote this when he was still in Kotaku. This is from March 12th, 2020. And he talks a little bit about the reports about Naughty Dog, right? In an article titled, "As Naughty Dog crunches on The Last of Us Part 2, developers wonder how much longer this approach can last." The excerpt I'm going to read starts here. Quote, They do try to take care of you, providing food, encouragement to go take breaks," said one former developer. "But for the most part, the implication is get the job done at all costs. One major consequence of this culture has been attrition. Of the 20 non-lead designers in the credits of 2016's Uncharted 4, a whopping 14, that's 70%, are no longer at the studio, which has had wide-ranging effects on the development of The Last of Us Part 2, and led to questions about the continued viability of the Naughty Dog approach. Some Naughty Dog veterans tolerate or even enjoy the crunch, while a handful have even found ways to work normal hours, but those speaking to Kotaku say they see it as an untenable atmosphere. Quote, this can't be something that's continuing over and over for each game because it is unsustainable, said one developer on The Last of Us Part 2. Quote, at a certain point, you realize I can't keep doing this. I'm getting older. I can't stay and work all night, end quote. And I think that right there is key, right? You mentioned people being brought in to work in the games industry a lot of times out of passion. Right, you say growing up, oh, I love video games. I want to work in video games. I have a passion for video games. You then get in, and then you want to work nonstop, or you allow yourself to work nonstop because one, that's the studio culture. Two, you're doing this because you love this. But because you love this, you then allow yourself to be taken advantage of and work long hours, and you burn out way earlier than you should burn out in a career like this because you're being taken advantage of. Right? It's that exact thing that this former worker at Naughty Dog is describing in their statement to Kotaku. I think it's that. I think it's also the thing where going back to Neil and Evan, them talking about saying that like, hey, sometimes somebody's like, hey, I don't want to work on Friday, and so I'll work on Sunday, or saying, hey, I prefer to work long hours because I have passion for this thing. There's also the thing of the story of one is not the story of all. There might be a handful of people that really do thrive off that environment because they are either workaholics or their work they're happy doing that for their own work. But another handful of people that are like, no, this sucks. I didn't sign up to work 80-hour weeks. I have a family that I want to see. And again, like, I understand the idea of there's no silver bullet to get rid of the amalgam of different scenarios that you have with people that work in your studio, because there are a lot of people that work in the studio in different departments and different environments on different teams. But that then can't be the response to the unionization question. Can't then be like oh yeah, I don't know much about this, because like you need some kind of solution that is going to speak to people as a whole and individually. Cool. Make it so that people can work on Sunday. How do you then lighten up on Friday then? Like, how do you then answer for people who are overworking? How do you then answer for people who are going weeks straight doing long hours as opposed to just 1 week and then being able to take a week off, right? Like, how do you answer to all that? And it's frustrating that it seems like they don't have the answer.
They have the answer. They just don't want that to be the answer.
Mm-hmm. Here's the thing too with this, and like, I'll try to keep it short because I could talk about this for my entire life, and I do on the internet. But this is such a classic industry thing where bosses are always like, oh, I can't control my employees when it comes to them overworking. I'm sure you could if they weren't working enough, right? You can't stroll into Naughty Dog, I'm guessing, and work 20 hours when you're contracted to work 40, because that's just how you thrive. Like, that's what you're passionate about. That's why I think it's just such a ridiculous statement to say, oh, well, I value, and it's kind of like, it's really toxic to me to say, like, I value my employees' happiness, and what makes them happy is overworking for me. So I'm not going to tell them no. Like, I just think that's fucked up. And I see a lot of that attitude in the industry, like, again, across development, across media, and it's like, yeah, of course you're down to empower your worker to do what makes them happy, because what makes them happy, quote unquote, is working more for you and working more than you're paying them to work. And like, that's just because people either claim to be or seem to be happy and being exploited doesn't mean that it's not illegal. I mean, at a more standard job, my brother used to work at Walgreens for some time in retail, and he mentioned that, like, when, it's time to clock out, they're literally be like, no, you have to go. You literally can't even finish what you're doing, because if you get injured right now or something happens, we'll get sued. Like, they have very strict guidelines to that. And again, those are different kinds of industries and stuff. I'm not saying that approach corporate would work for, a studio. But the idea that, like, you can't make your employees stop working is such a choice to me. Yeah. Like, I just feel like, I don't know. I have nothing nice to say about this, but those are my rants and statements on it.
I kind of agree with you, Blessing. Like maybe the unionization isn't the silver bullet for everything, but it should help. Unionization is the first step to giving employees and workers ownership and protection of their work. And that is and that is the kind of core of the problem, not just in our industry, but in kind of like almost every industry in the Western world as a whole, that's kind of built off of this capitalism idea, that anybody who's, you know, lower on the ladder is obviously not going to be as satisfied or as happy as the people who are near the top of the ladder. And the first step needs to be giving employees ownership of their actual work. And that's going to help them become satisfied and more happy in what they're doing in their everyday lives, whether it is overworking or, you know, not being able to do as much every week, right? It's such a bullshit answer.
Yeah. And to be clear, I mean, personally, I do think the first step for an answer is unionization. Like, I think that is, I don't think leaving the answer be up to the leads of the studio is the right thing, right? Like, I think that has to come from the down up. I think it has to come from a place where the employees are able to unite and go, cool, these are the standards we want to establish, and then that working its way up, and workers being able to establish that separate from people who are leading the business. You know, for me, that is the first step, and then there are steps to come after that. But I think I think being able to do that on the worker level is
very important
for me, like a good step. Yeah. But again, I know it's complicated. I know there's many steps to it. I know like making video games is hard, right? Like I understand all that, but you also have to treat your workers the best that you can. Now, are we ready to talk about single player games?
I think so. It's going to be a hard pivot, but I love the work Naughty Dog produces, and it is such like an awkward situation in some ways, you know, for lack of a maybe better term, of like, I love Last of Us 2. It's one of my favorite games ever. But yes, I mean, if I am to believe a lot of the reports that have come out, it was made in a really toxic way. And like, that is this industry. So, you know, definitely great that this interview touched on that, because it is totally, like you said, in the mix of all these other things of like, oh, and then this is how we mocap the horse. And then it's like, you know, unionization.
This is how we mocap the horse. By the way, our workers are working 80 hours. Don't pay attention to that. Let's talk to you about how we want to make some
exactly. But continue.
Okay, so picking up this last chunk, I'm going to pick up from Ben's interview, of course. Again, go over to GameInformer, give them a click. They did such an incredible job. It picks up here. Ben asks, some companies seem to be moving away from big, story-driven single-player games. For example, Ubisoft recently announced that it would be developing more long-tail free-to-play games. Do you feel that story-driven, single-player games are still Naughty Dog's future? Evan responds, absolutely. And it's sort of in our DNA to tell these stories. I think that's going to continue. Single player experiences are near and dear to us. It's what has attracted a lot of people to Naughty Dog, and that's what inspires them. So I think we're going to keep it as long as we can. Neil responds, and again, going back to who Sony is, there has never been a mandate like, quote, oh, this is where we see when shifting. Can you start making these kinds of games instead? We know, just as they know, that when you work on something you're excited by, something you're passionate by, you're going to do great work. And then lastly, Ben here asks, you basically put a bow on the Uncharted series, but you still have that Last of Us multiplayer project in the works. Do you want to continue to work on the IP you established, or do you have a desire to create new properties at this point? Evan responds, I think the easy answer is both. I think there's excitement to develop new IP, but there is still a ton of love for Uncharted and The Last of Us, and I don't think you'll see both. And I think you'll see both kind of projects from us in the future. Janet, where are you at with that? Do you have confidence that we're going to continue to see?
I can't play any more Uncharted.
You can't deal with more Uncharted. What about The Last of Us?
I'm like, the games are just going to keep coming because I'm still trying to finish 4. I mean, it's funny because with these two questions, kind of like asking about the future, I feel like you're always going to get this sort of sure answer from it. Like, I think if the question about is single players to the future, and then being like, yeah, I think if you ask that question slightly differently and say like, are you open-minded to like a non-single player future, they would also be like, yeah, I think they're just gonna kind of keep their minds open to what, as Druckmann said, where their passions lie, and like allowing them the space to grow in that. For me, I'm always team something new because I think it's just a little bit more exciting and interesting, and like I like the gamble. I think inherently a new IP is always riskier than, especially when you think of how massively successful like Uncharted and Last of Us are as IPs. Like, they have a power that no new IP is going to have out the gate, at least just inherently. But I mean, with Last of Us 2, I'm really like, honestly, you make all Last of Us you want until, which maybe that's like the monkey's paws, like closing as I make that statement. But, you know, after playing 1, I'm like, yeah, 2 really isn't needed. But then I played 2 and I'm like, holy cow, I'm so glad you made this. Thank God I'm not in charge. So I kind of at this point trust the studio to, you know, pick projects that are going to be incredible. Like, I think they do incredible work, and I feel like they'll probably step it up for whatever they're doing, whether they're continuing making a new thing. But new is always better in my mind.
Yeah, I think for sure we're gonna get more Last of Us in the future. I mean, they're working on the factions game, which theoretically is going to be Last of Us, but the fact that they're making that makes me think, well, they're not making that for no reason, right? Like they're gonna want that to feed into an ongoing IP, an ongoing thing. Uncharted, I think, is gonna continue to exist. I don't think Naughty Dog's gonna make more Uncharted. You know, I mean, Evan Wells, right, literally mentioned that we have limited time. We can't make all the games that we want. And so I think Uncharted, and with reports that we've gotten earlier in the year about studios being brought in to work on Uncharted, so the Sony San Diego studio, not the one that makes baseball games, a new San Diego studio was brought in to work on Last of Us Remake, all this stuff, right? Like I think there's a lot of shuffling around going on over with Naughty Dog's IP to figure out the best ways to treat them. But I also think that Naughty Dog itself probably at this point wants to make something new and should make something new. I want to see a new IP coming out of Naughty Dog because I think they're too talented to continue working on the same 2 franchises over and over and over again. Like I love what they've done with those franchises, but with something like Uncharted, I think you can hand those reins over to somebody else. Something like The Last of Us doesn't have to be your only franchise. You can go back and forth between that and something new. But yeah, whatever it is, right? Like I'm excited. I'm excited by the prospect of them having freedom with what their future is. Like I want to see Naughty Dog make what Naughty Dog wants to make, because so far they've had success doing that. So far they've been killing it, having that creative freedom, be like, cool, we're going to make this post-apocalyptic game now. Cool. We're going to make Nathan Drake chasing after treasure the game. You know, like they Naughty Dog, when they have the creativity to do what they want, I think they do a good job. And so the fact that it seems like they have the creativity to work on a multiplayer game, even though I'm sure for Sony, they're probably like, all right, you know, The Last of Us and Uncharted were successful so far. Do you need a multiplayer game? I wonder if they're asking that question at all. But like it being Naughty Dog, I assume that no matter what, they still have that freedom to do that. And so for me, that's exciting. But the conversation about Naughty Dog multiplayer doesn't stop there, because next up in PlayStation updates, I mentioned that was the end of the interview, but there is more for Naughty Dog. I'm pulling from an article over on Video Games Chronicle by Andy Robinson, who writes, Naughty Dog says it's aggressively hiring for its new cinematic multiplayer game. It goes like this. The Last of Us developer, Naughty Dog, says it's aggressively hiring for its new standalone multiplayer game and promised a cinematic experience similar to its single-player blockbusters. The Sony studio posted a dozen job openings for the multiplayer project on its social media account on Friday, covering multiple disciplines including programming, design, and art. Commenting on the job roles, The Last of Us Part 2's co-director, Vinit Agarwal, wrote, quote, We're aggressively hiring. Apply if you want to be a part of bringing the cinematic experience between players in our new standalone multiplayer action game, end quote. Little has been officially revealed on the multiplayer project, but the job descriptions posted this week state that Naughty Dog is, quote, seeking to bring the same level of ambition and quality of our signature story-driven games to this unique multiplayer project, end quote. An open position for a systems designer calls for an individual able to design and balance gameplay systems, quote, such as player abilities and weapons, as well as, quote, combat encounter objectives and dynamic events, end quote. The job ads also match with comments made by PlayStation Studios boss Herman Holst in June, who hinted at a narrative-driven online experience coming from PlayStation. Quote, who says that multiplayer experience can't have great stories, right? He said. Janet, where are you at with what the standalone multiplayer project from Naughty Dog is going to be?
I'm excited about it because it does seem like it's, and I don't know if they're going to succeed at this, but it seems like they are trying to incorporate their core design ethos, which is, you know, something that is cinematic and story driven. What that looks like in a multiplayer situation is kind of questionable. I mean, it kind of reminds me of this statement that I make all the time, which is it an idea no one has thought of, or is it a bad idea? Are you, you know, breaking new ground? Is this going to be a new subgenre of how we experience multiplayer games? Or is this going to be like that weird thing we're going to be talking about, like, 100 episodes from now? Like, oh, remember the Last of Us multiplayer game? Or, like, like, I don't know where it's going to land. Optimistically, I'm betting that it'll be pretty fun and pretty cool. But yeah, I'm curious as to, like, I guess how narrative heavy it would get to. I feel like they have a lot of opportunity given the general construction of Last of Us 2, where it is so much, there's so many more characters than in, Last of Us 1, where you have these different factions. And I could see them like exploring like a different faction and that not being narratively necessary if they end up ever doing Last of Us 3 or however they're going to couch it. But yeah, I'm really interested too, the idea of like a cinematic experience between players, because so much of like the amazing cinematic elements from Last of Us 2 are, scripted. So I'm like, what does cinematography look like in a dynamic, unscripted environment? Like, I'm kind of curious as to what that's going to be, or how is it going to just be like these big multiplayer moments and then like a hard cut or something, or like stuff in between seasons? Like, I'm not really sure what that'll look like. I will say I love the gameplay of Last of Us 2. So the idea of having like these little like objectives, and I think they could have a lot of fun with that. But yeah, I don't know what this would look like, and I don't know if they know what it looks like either. Actually, they're still hiring. So
do we think that factions might have gotten rebooted into this?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, this is exactly what this is, right? When they first announced The Last of Us Part 2, or not when they first announced it, when we were leading up to Last of Us Part 2, and they did a PlayStation State of Play showing off gameplay, I believe it was then where press got to preview The Last of Us Part 2, and we got the answer that, oh, there is no factions in this game. And that made people go, why? We love factions. Me included. I was like, where's factions? Because I want some factions. And then right after that, they're like, oh, no, it's okay. We're working on a new factions type game. I forget the exact statement because it's been so long now. But that was then confirmation on what this thing is. Like this is exactly what I think factions is evolving into. But I think it's interesting because as somebody who really dug factions, the way they're describing this sounds like it is the I guess scope for it seems way bigger than what Factions was on PS3 for The Last of Us 1, because in Last of Us 1 it was just a mode, right? It was 4v4, you had survival, you had other modes as well, but it was very limited. You had multiple maps. It was a PvP deathmatch situation, and it was easy, used the same mechanics as Last of Us 1, and it worked out really well. Like, I thought it was a really fun mode. I absolutely adored it. This sounds like they're trying to take that and push it even further in a way that I'm very curious about, because this sounds unlike anything Naughty Dog has done before. When they talk about it having the same level of ambition and quality of our signature story-driven games, one, I'm like, absolutely no way, right? Like, you're not going to make a multiplayer game that's of the same ambition as The Last of Us Part 2. That sounds like it's going to take in so much time. Like, I don't think people have asked for that from Naughty Dog, right? Like, people just wanted the factions mode. You're telling me you're going to make something of the same ambition and level of scope? All right,
where we dropping?
Yeah, where we dropping? But then they also mentioned the player abilities and weapons, and then combat and counter objectives and dynamic events. These all sound way bigger than a 4v4 PvP deathmatch mode. This sounds like it is something akin to either a games as a service or something akin to a battle royale or something in between. This sounds I don't know. This sounds way bigger, and I'm fascinated with it. I wonder if they actually end up delivering it, because with the amount of scope that they're talking about in these job descriptions, I'm like, this sounds like something you start and don't finish.
I was I'm like, are we gonna see this? Like, when is this gonna come out? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm interested in it. I will say, as someone, you're sort of like the multiplayer expert here. You do Apex, you're out here like playing Genshin Impact, like you were really into Legends. Like, what would it take for you to get really invested in this? Is it really just like it
coming out? I'm already invested, Janet. I'm already there. Like, as soon as they put out this game, it is my new Ghost of Tsushima Legends. I am already in that. But the question is, for me, are they going to put out this game at this point? And we'll see. Like, for me, what I would want out of this, I mean, I would have been fine with just another Factions 4v4 multiplayer with Last of Us Part 2 mechanics. For me, that would have been enough. If you're gonna give me a Division-like game, that would worry me a little bit, because I like the Last of Us story for being this condensed, single-player driven, traditional Naughty Dog story. I think they're good at delivering cutscene-based narrative that doesn't have to worry about updates, doesn't have to worry about fitting in for multiple players, doesn't have to worry about anything else except for it being a good story that fits in a single player game. So if you're going to give me a Division like Last of Us experience, that's a bigger question that like I honestly don't know. Whatever it is, it'd be one that I'd be willing to check out. But if you're telling me that it's a battle royale, I'd be very excited for it, because that, for me, that does sound like me. That sounds like you're taking in the mechanics from Last of Us Part 2, where you're hiding under cars, where you're being even more sneaky than you were in the Last of Us Part 1. That brings in the listen mode. That brings in so many of the stealthy elements that Last of Us is known for, and translates it to a game type that is centered around a lot of stealth. That could be tight. That could be dope.
Now
But-
I'm thinking of like the games as a service trappings that we normally see, and like how that'll translate to the Last of Us universe, because like kind of tying it back to the the GameInformer interview, this idea of sort of darker themes, and they kind of have like a more like serious approach to a lot of their like games and storytelling at this point, but multiplayer is inherently like more about like having fun. So it's like, what do skins look like for this game? Is it just different dirty button-up shirts? Like it has to make sense in the universe. So
Yeah.
I'm curious as to like how are they gonna, if they're going like kind of I guess a somewhat more traditional route with multiplayer, like how are they gonna bring in the trappings of things like maybe having different events or seasons or whatever without making it seem disconnected from the world.
Combat encounter objectives and dynamic events is what they say in the description. Of course, that can change. They're just hiring for work.
Cube from Fortnite's gonna be in there. Like what is dynamic events?
Yeah, but like what does a dynamic event look like in the world of The Last of Us, right? Like even when they say player abilities, for me, I extrapolate that and I go, player abilities, are you going to have different classes with different abilities? Are the classes going to be the wolves and the fireflies, right? Like, how are you going to go about that? Are they going to have different types of weapons that they can get their hands on? Like, I think there's so many places you can go with a Last of Us big multiplayer game. And I am fascinated with the idea that Naughty Dog is working on it. If you told me that Sony was working on The Last of Us big gigantic multiplayer game, I would have assumed that maybe they just brought somebody in to use the Last of Us IP. This is unlike anything Naughty Dog has done before, and so it interests me. My curiosity is piqued. I want it half because I'm curious, the other half is because I love Last of Us multiplayer, but for now we'll have to wait and see. Janet, right now it's time for PlayStation Picks. That's where we highlight a few of the cool looking games coming to PSN this week. We have one big hitter for you. Janet, it's time. The Resident Evil Village Killer is out this week. The Medium is coming to PS5 on Friday, September 3rd. Get hyped, everybody. It's happening. As far as the picks themselves, we got Kiwi coming to PS5 and PS4 on Tuesday, August 31st. Kiwi is a cute, cooperative postal puzzler starring Jeff and Deborah, two small Kiwi birds working in a whimsical post office. They must jump, flap, peck, and butt slam their way across an interactive landscape of levers, bells, and buttons to get those messages delivered on time. Janet, I heard you yell. Is Kiwi your thing? Is this your jam right here?
Yeah, I've been following this game for a while, and it looks really cute. I like cooperative opportunities in games, and you don't get like a whole lot of them, especially ones that I'm presuming this has local because of just the setup of it, the shared screen. So yeah, it could be really cool. Is this the It Takes Two killer? We'll find out. It looks adorable though, so I'm excited about it.
The It Takes Two killer was Operation Tango. It already came out.
Yeah, Operation Tango. I feel like we don't talk about that game enough. It was so good. It was so good.
I wouldn't think of it more of a It Takes Two killer, but would it be an Overcooked killer for you? That's what I think. That's the real question there, right?
Oh, nothing has the sauce that Overcooked has.
Okay.
Like,
all right.
Yeah, like when I'm frying up those burgers, man, it just gets wild. Or grilling them, I don't know. Yeah, I do fine. I do all right. We get 3 stars. But I mean, I think it could be really fun. Yeah, like I'm excited for this. I also like it just feels like a creative take on this kind of concept too. Like I would never think to put like a couple birds into a post office. So I'm like, yeah, let's go. Let's like deliver some letters.
Good point. I never thought of that either. That's a good point. What are those birds doing in that post office? You'll have to play the game and see. We also got, how do you think I pronounce this one? Slid or Clid? Clid,
I
it sounds
think.
weird to say. I don't like
It
saying that
sounds.
out
It's
loud.
really close to something really inappropriate.
Exactly. Clid
Clyde?
the snail.
Nah,
Clyde
it
the
needs an E.
I want to say Clid the Slid.
It's
but that's not anything.
CLID. CLID. I'm going to say Clyde just to keep my own self safe. Clyde the Snail is coming to PS5 and PS4 on Tuesday, August 31st. A quirky top-down shooter about a grumpy humanoid snail armed to the radula. Experience a dark fantasy fable and explore an unforgiving miniature world to exterminate the slug plague with an arsenal of badass weapons and a unique set of snaily skills.
The Ascent Killer.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I'm like, what's this gonna kill? I was not expecting that the snail was just gonna be like packing heat. Like it's a little overwhelming to be honest. Why is the snail like bipedal though? That's a little upsetting. But
what you got against legs?
I just figured if you have a snail, wouldn't the whole? I mean, you have snail abilities still, so I feel like you'll get the little. What is a snail ability anyway? It's just the slime they leave behind.
Yeah, you like people slip on it. Here's my thing: if you're gonna give me
moving real fast too,
if you're gonna give me the Ascent, but I play as a snail, I do want legs. I'm not gonna be slithering around real slow.
I feel like it could be like the Hades scenarios. Dash, you know, like that's what it could have been.
Really, I don't know how I feel about it. I don't like that. There's a dash that leaves behind slime every time you dash, and so that your enemies slip on it gets staggered.
Blessing, just a heads up, we have a live "You're Wrong" from Madognick96 who says Kiwi is dated for September 14th, not August 31st. It got delayed a couple weeks. Just a heads up for people looking out for Kiwi.
Okay, well, you're gonna see that again on the PlayStation picks. Then are we live, Barrett?
Well, one less thing to do this week.
I didn't realize we were live this whole time.
Yeah. Hi.
What's up, chat? What's up, Patreon?
I told you we're still streaming to the Patreon kids, but then after I'll private the video so then they can get the Far Cry 6 preview tomorrow.
There's so much that goes on with getting the show
to the
final YouTube.
Don't worry, you're
that I also never understand. I didn't say anything illegal, right? When
no,
we were between the interview and now, I didn't say anything illegal, right?
You said several things that are illegal, and the authorities are on their way. I'm sorry.
Fuck.
I also had Kiwi still down for this Tuesday because like I too have a cursed calendar of releases, and it's gotten all messed up because of all the delays. So.
Janet Garcia's super fun summer games list of 2021.
Extravaganza spectacular, yeah. It's going.
I don't even like this as a joke. All right, I don't need you to come through and take my list spin. All right, it's my list.
Is your thing being the calendar guy? Is that?
I mean, I'm trying to make it my thing.
What it actually is. I feel like we have to probably recouch that as something different. But yeah, I have a calendar. I just don't talk about it that often.
Okay, well, keep your calendar to yourself. All right, people only need to know about one calendar. Is Blessing Super Fun Game Release Calendar 2021. We have one more pick for you. It's a game called Golf Club Wasteland that's coming to PS4 on Friday, September 3rd. Human life is wiped out. Earth is now a golf course for the ultra rich. That's it. That's the description. Janet, what are your thoughts?
Golfing's having quite the wave in the last like 2 or 3 years. I'm wondering what the next big sport is going to be to take like the indie and game development scene by storm. Because right now golf is having a bit of a moment.
Pitch to me. What's your next golf game that you want to see?
I want to see probably like a mini golf take. I enjoy mini golf more than. I mean, this is pretty unofficial here that we're looking at if you're looking at the video version. But I don't know. I don't know what else it would be other than mini golf, but it'd be something mini golf based.
I'm trying to find a link. Somebody sent me this morning a golf game that is a golf roguelite. That was announced this morning. I'm having a hard time finding it. Barrett, if you're able to look for it. It was announced today. But it looked interesting. It piqued my interest because I love roguelites and I do love golf as well. And
is it
there's
called
nothing
Curse to Golf?
It is called Curse to Golf, yes.
Fucking
if you want to bring that up, because again, like you said, Janet, golf games are having a moment.
Oh, I did see this a little bit. Yeah, actually. Why do I already? I've already seen this. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it does look kind of cool. Like it's weird. The levels look very like platformery, but then you're golfing instead.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just interesting because the concept of golf is so simple that there just happens to be a lot of things that you can do with it. I think that's the whole thing, right? You're just hitting a ball with a stick, right? So you can take that and turn that concept into everything. I mean, Pong was just hitting a ball with a stick, right? Like
hockey.
Maybe
Like,
that's the thing. Maybe video games distilled are just hitting a ball with a stick. Think about it.
Yeah, it all boils down to that. But yeah, it's fun seeing like creative takes. I did play the Mario Golf game that came out this year, but that didn't really hit for me. But yeah, I still need to check out more golf games actually, because the only golf game I really played a lot and enjoyed was Golf with Friends, I think it's called, which is also like a mini golf thing. It was pretty good.
Janet, now it's time. Let's talk about what you've been playing. Janet, I'm going to start with you.
Did I don't think I mentioned this on this show yet, but remind me if I did, because I don't remember. Did I mention that I beat Demon Souls on the show?
I don't think you did. I've been waiting for you to talk about this.
I beat Demon Souls.
Congratulations.
Boom. I'm finally a real gamer, y'all. It took this long. The internship is over. It honestly felt great. Just because it was such a long process. It had been a while since I played a game that took me that long. I think it took me like somewhere between 30 and 40 hours. I had documented it. I'm going to try to see if I can find it on my own Twitter. But I did feel accomplished. I was shocked because I had been streaming it in 4-hour increments, and I wasn't sure that I was going to finish the day that I did, because I had like quite a few bosses left. But, you know, I have been using like a few of the summons, and then, you know, some of the, it's weird because with Demon Souls, I would expect in any Souls, like I would expect like everything is going to be hard. It's just hard the whole time, and maybe it gets harder over time, because that's how most games are designed. But there are some like easy bosses in Demon Souls, which was weird. It's like, oh, this person's actually just kill this one guy and you just walk, and then it's over. And I'm like, cool, works for me. But it was very satisfying to have finally seen it through.
Yeah,
I think that checked off.
I think people oversell how difficult Souls games are, because like for me, it was the difficulty that kept me away for the longest time, because I knew those games could be punishing, and I think aesthetically I just wasn't fascinated enough with them to push through a lot of the difficulty. But when I finally sat down and really pushed myself to play Bloodborne, I was shocked by how I mean, not easy, but how manageable so much of it was. Like the Souls games are very playable games. You just have to like shift the way you think about playing action games. You got to think more so about how to conserve how to conserve your XP. You got to figure out how you're going to invest your XP, and you got to like you got to be more careful and methodical than traditional fast action games. Once you have that figured out, I feel like, you know, they're not a breeze, but they're not the most difficult thing in the world that people would make them out to be.
Yeah, it was a lot more manageable than I thought it would be. It helped a lot, again, streaming it and having people in chat explain the many things that are just never explained in the game. Like, literally all of the game is not explained. Like, even the act of something as simple as, you know, returning to the Nexus, the fact that the level progression isn't just, you know, the first one and then you keep going. You'd want to like jump between, like, there's like 2, 3, and none of them are labeled. There's like a blacksmith, but there's the good blacksmith is in a different place than the main place. Like, just all of those different layers, I think, can be kind of overwhelming, but having just a little bit of ancillary help went a whole way. And I do have my stats. It took me 28 hours and 20 minutes to roll credits. Nice. I died 165 times. Nice. It took me 7 streams. I was a magician, and my soul level at the end was 63.
Proud of you.
Proud of you. But it's like the only I had posted on Twitter like, hey y'all, like I beat my first Souls game, and so many people were like, oh my god, congratulations. It's again a unique thing to Souls games where everyone's like coming out of the woodwork to like people I haven't spoken to in years, and I'm like, y'all, I beat games all the time. It's like
graduating college.
Yeah, where are y'all for all, you know, when I'm out here, you know, rolling credits on It Takes Two, it's just crickets. But here everyone's like, oh wow, like and that is kind of the nice thing. It's a very like passionate community and a really shared experience. And you know, I played on PS5 for the remake, and I encourage everyone to check it out. Spoilers, it's a good game, and I do think it's a lot more manageable than one would think. It's more manageable than I thought.
So do you have a Souls game that you're going to play next?
I forget what everyone tells me to play next.
Let me tell you about this game called Bloodborne.
People have been telling me, God, what is it? It's not Demon Souls, the other one. The other one.
Dark Souls.
Dark Souls, thank you. I'm like, it's the same name, basically. People have been saying Dark Souls 2 and 3, and to maybe skip 1.
Really? Because 1 is old, is that why?
I forgot why. I don't know. Let me know in the comments what y'all think, because I'm open to whatever, because I don't think I own any of them already. Like this one I already owned. But I'm thinking maybe that's the route I'm gonna go. Bloodborne is very in high demand. But I'm worried about how fast it is. Like, Demon Souls is so slow. Like, you're just slowly walking around and, like, stabbing something, then walking away, and casting a spell, and then rolling away. You can really, like, cheese bitch strategy it, and I don't know if I can do that for Bloodborne. Like I feel like Bloodborne, I'm gonna have to be like fast, and I'm slow, so I don't.
Let me tell you about this game called
fast.
Sekiro.
Oh god.
I don't know if I can
Bloodborne
be
is
fast.
Here's my thing, right? I really want to go back and play more Demon Souls because I absolutely adore Bloodborne and Sekiro, but I did the thing where I started off with Bloodborne, and Bloodborne has a speed that when I first jumped into it, I thought was slow. I was like, oh, this is way more methodical than what I'm used to, because I was used to playing your Devil May Cries or your Nier Automata's action games that were character action games as opposed to more Soulsy. And so playing Bloodborne, I was like, oh, this is kind of slow. But over time, I was like, oh, I really dig this combat system. This might be one of my favorite combat systems in a game. And then once I beat it, I was like, I need more of this hit. Jumped into Sekiro, and I think I maybe even liked the combat system in Sekiro, possibly even more than Bloodborne. But it was the thing where the speed was picked up, and it shifted combat from being about sidestepping and dodging and parrying to being more about staggering your opponent and like being in their face and being aggressive, way more aggressive than defensive. And that spoke to me so much. But I think that also made it so that when I did pick up Demon Souls after that, something felt way off. It was really hard to try and adjust for Demon Souls after playing Sekiro. But I wonder how it would be the other way around, because I think it would probably be easier to go from slow to fast than from fast to slow. And so my theory is that you'd probably be fine playing Bloodborne. It would take some learning, but I think you'd be fine with it.
Yeah, like I think too, Bloodborne, I have Bloodborne baggage because that was one of the first games I got. I got the PS4 late, because I got all my consoles late until like this generation where I'm now like in the industry and like it makes sense to get the things, and like also it's easier to get stuff. But I got the PS4 late and I was like, okay, I like went really hard at the Best Buy. I was like, all right, we got the PS4, we got a second controller, we're getting Bloodborne, we're getting No Man's Sky, and we're getting NBA 2K, whatever the year I got the console was. The 2K was for my brother, but yeah, because I was just balling out that day. I was like, we just got a new credit card limit, I got a new job, and then I lost that job, and then life was sad. But at that small window, I was like going really hard in the PS4, and I tried playing Bloodborne, but with like no guides, no help, no contacts, like nothing. And I like couldn't do it, and I didn't understand what the hell was going on, and I was like, never mind. And ever since then, I have not returned. So I'm very curious as to, now that I have more of an understanding of like what's going on, and also like a more willingness to actually give it a go, like how that'll be. But yeah, we'll see.
What else have you been playing?
I played 2 hours of Psychonauts 2. Wasn't in love with it. The combat, the combat's very serviceable. The platforming is just okay, but the world is very super creatively made. And like I like the character design a lot. I like the general conceit of the idea of going inside like people's consciousness, and the idea of like the physical embodiment and manifestation of things like doubt or bad ideas. Like I think that's so fun and playful and
like
cool.
Persona 5.
Yeah, sure. Why not? But it's a really slow start. So I'm like I'm not drawn in 2 hours in. I'm not like, yeah, let me keep seeing this through. But at the same time, a lot of people were like, oh, there's some really cool levels later. Like you got to at least get to, I think like there's like a circus or a carnival area. So TBD on if I'll continue. But yes, as I was formulating that thought alongside my brother, I could sense Barrett's heart breaking across the ether of the internet, which made me sad. But yeah.
Barry, if it helps out, I plan to jump into Psychonauts too. I keep getting distracted
because when you like came through, you were like, "Should I play this?" And I'm like, "It's not that wavy." And you're like, "You sound like you were gonna play it."
No, I definitely
convinced you, Wes. The way I sold it to you, you're like, "Oh yeah, I'm downloading it now."
Well,
yeah, this dude's playing the field. Like he's telling people what they want to hear. You know,
people exactly. I'm just here making people happy. People keep selling me on Psychonauts 2, and every single thing people have to say about it makes me think that I would absolutely adore this game, because I've heard it compared to Rare on N64. I've heard people say that it has the Double Fine charm to it. I love Broken Age. Broken Age is like my favorite Double Fine game that I played.
Broken Age is really good.
It's really good. And like I've heard people say that like it breaks 2021 video game convention in really fun ways, or like in ways that makes it its own thing, right? Like I like the idea of it being a collectathon. I like it being a manageable collectathon, which is what it sounds like. And I just love the creativity of the world. And I want to play something that, you know, feels different and fresh and creative. Because for me, I think that's a lot of the reason why I love something like It Takes Two. Especially when we talk about our conversation weeks ago on this show about It Takes Two versus Ratchet and Clank and what each does well, right? Like I really like the whimsy and weird shit that goes down in something like It Takes Two. And I know Double Fine when we're talking about weird shit and whimsy, that's kind of their bag. That's kind of what they're good at. And so I want to see how that translates to a collectathon. And so I'm gonna play it.
Yeah.
I just got to stop playing Genshin.
Yeah, to stop playing Genshin, get into Psychonauts 2. I know you'll love it.
It's easier said than done, though, Barrett. Genshin has its hooks in me.
Oh, God. Well, anyway, if like Ratchet and Clank was like the Pixar game this year, you know, like how people are like, oh man, like every iteration looks more and more like a Pixar. Like Ratchet and Clank,
Movie, yeah.
I think has that like kind of almost like cookie cutter hero story kind of thing. I think Psychonauts 2 is like the Tim Burton game this year. Just like how weird and cartoony it is. Definitely has like some of those mid-2000 Cartoon Network vibes. For obvious reasons, like the voice of Raz is the voice of Invader Zim, and stuff like that. It's such a damn charming game, and I love it. And it makes me sad that Janet is not as in love with it, but I understand that it might not be for everybody, so that's okay.
Yeah, like I got like mixed vibes from, you know, people in my chat, because I streamed it, so people in my chat were like, oh, they either haven't tried it or they have or whatever, and like some people were really into it, but then also some people did say that it feels like it controls kind of old, like it feels a little like dated, and I kind of agree with that. Like it does feel like a little stiff, I think in some ways. So I don't know. Like it's one of those things where for me, is the world enough to like justify the gameplay? At the same time, too, I feel like I'm still in the early phases of gameplay, because I think I'm still, you know, learning how to like chain together abilities and like get like utilize the tool set that I'm given. And I think the tool set is really interesting. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see if I can make time to come back to it. And then other than that, my stuff's not on PlayStation because I'm doing Death's Door, which is really fun.
Hell
and I
yeah.
do want to shout out Road 96 is really freaking good. It's PC and
Dude.
Switch only right now. It's fire.
I booted that one. I booted that one up.
I hear it's. Are you on Switch though, or are you on PC?
I played a little bit on PC.
Okay. Greg, he had tweeted me and said he tried it on Switch and that it was like unplayable, like it couldn't perform. So maybe don't get it on Switch, but on PC, I don't know how far in you are. I played like 2 hours of it. I'm in love with this game. This is like the best story-driven game I've played in a really long time. But I don't know what your quick take is on it.
You played way more than I have, even playing just 2 hours. I've only played maybe about 45 minutes of it, and I was just fascinated with it because when it was first pitched, it was pitched as a procedurally generated narrative game where you're basically on a road trip, and I just thought that idea sounded fascinating, and so I hopped into it. But I've just not been able to play more of it because a billion games are out right now that I am playing. But it's from the get-go, it seemed really cool. I like the writing. I like some of the the tone and vibe of it almost reminded me of a Life is Strange in a way. In the way that, you know, like the style of the world has that same like textured style that Life is Strange has, but then the tone of the characters and like walking into a camp and having people like somebody's playing music and like talking to somebody else, and there's something going on the radio. Yeah, it felt very Life is Strange to me, which I really appreciated.
Yeah, but like to me, as also a big Life is Strange fan, and like it's weird because I feel like so much of Life is Strange has been weak, or so much stuff that has come out of that's like Don't Nod in general has been like, but I still keep going back because I love the genre. But for me, this is like, I'm like, this is what Life is Strange needs to be, where it's like the choices really matter and are interesting. It also has like this kind of RPG almost layer to it, where choices aren't just impacting things that happen later and they do the classic, like, this decision will make an impact, but it can also sort of spec your character on like what kind of personality type they sort of have, or like how likely they are to encounter certain things. So it just feels so much more intriguing and dynamic, and like, it's just so good. It like immediately, I'm only 2 hours in, so I don't want to speak too highly of it until I see it all the way through, but it immediately jumped up to my top 5. This might be like my second or third favorite game of this year.
Wow.
Like this is, I don't know why no one's
awesome.
talking about this game. It's freaking amazing. But what have you been playing? Stop playing Genshin Impact.
I will not stop playing Genshin Impact. So I have been playing a lot of Genshin Impact. It was that fun thing where I had a lot of games downloaded, a lot of redacteds, but then also games like Genshin Impact that I downloaded after Gamescom opening night live. Was it after Gamescom? It was something happened last week where we saw it somewhere. I think it was the Aloy
Gamescom
trailer.
opening night live. Yeah.
Okay, was that where they showed off the Aloy stuff?
Yes.
Okay, so cool. So I saw that trailer and I was like, oh, that looks fun. And I re-downloaded Genshin. Genshin I played for about 7 hours last year when it first came to PS5, but I fell off of it. Similar thing where there's too many games and I wasn't feeling how it ran on PS4. I think I said PS5. It launched on PS4 last year. It didn't launch on PS5 until earlier this year. But when I played on PS4, when it didn't run amazing, there was a lot of frame dropping, and the game just ran rough because it's a game that seems like it's trying to do a lot. It has a huge world that's loading, and there's a lot going on in it. But then also there's just other stuff to play, and also there's microtransaction elements in this game that scared me off because I was hearing from people that it has a lot of gotcha stuff in there, and now that I'm playing it again, it definitely does. But I dropped off of it last year for those reasons. I picked it up after seeing the Aloy stuff because I was curious, and the game just looks really cool and fun to me. Re-download it, and I put in, I don't know how many hours I put in over the weekend. I must have put in like another 7 hours this last weekend. 'Cause I did it across 1, 2, 3, 4 different streams that I did on my channel. Played quite a bit, and I have started to fall in love with Genshin Impact. I've been having such a good time with it. It's funny because I described it on my stream as a game that feels like it was made by an algorithm that was specifically made to target me, where it's a free-to-play game coming from Tencent, right? Like, it has gacha mechanics in it, and I would compare it to being, I believe the phrase was coined by What's Good, the waifu casino. I think I think maybe it was Sisbando Casino talking about the Fire Emblem mobile game. I forget which, but this game is 1000% a waifu casino in the way that you have an assortment of characters you can choose from. And at any given point, you have 4 characters equipped, and you can switch between them. Each character is correlated to a different element that is helping you in combat, and you can mid-combat switch between characters to where I'll start off a combo using my wind character and then use a wind move, but then switch really quickly to my fire character to use a fire move, and that'll then cause this chain reaction of elements colliding and causing bonus damage. And you can use the different elements in different ways in that way, and it's fun because I think that plays off of the Breath of the Wild thing of that game being very physics heavy and you being able to play off of different elements. I think this game does it in a way that is not as cool as Breath of the Wild, but still holds that same level of creativity and for the player there, where I want to see how many different ways I can combine things in combat to damage opponents. So you have that, but with that, there are a lot of unlockable characters you can get that correlate to those different elements. And so with each event, they have an event banner, and on event banners, there's a bunch of unlockables associated with them. And so you look through that list of unlockables, and it's like, cool, this event banner has 4 main characters, and it's like the cool girl that has a guitar that she strums that does fire attacks. It's another girl who is like more of like a chibi style girl, right? Like cuter, but also like has like healing abilities and has a fun spin dash move like Sonic the Hedgehog. Her name is Sayu. I've unlocked her. You have like other characters as well. You have Yoimiya, who like does her own thing, and you are going in and you are rolling for these characters in a way that again is very gacha. It's very casino, right? Like you there are currencies on currencies in this game, Janet. There are like maybe like 9 different currencies.
Have you spent money in this game, like real money?
Not real money. No, but I've gotten close. Because
what will put you over the edge?
If I don't unlock Xinyan is a guitar girl that I really want. And I think today's the last day that I can unlock her. And it's driving me insane, Janet, because I want to unlock her so bad because I think she's the coolest character in the event. And if I got her, she would be the character with the most personality in my party by far. Because my party right now is my main character. It is, what's his name? He's Kaya. I was going to say he's so uninteresting that I don't remember his name. But Kaya, I have Amber, and then I also have Sayu. Xinyan would add so much life to my team, Janet. But the thing is, so you spend intertwined fates on these packs that I'm talking about, right? These event packs. There's also a different kind of fate, acquaint fates. I don't need to get into that. It's just it's a different kind of currency you unlock different kinds of packs with. You then have what are they called? There's way too many currencies in this game. You have currencies that you can use to buy intertwined fates, basically. And like, you're collecting a bunch of different shit as you're playing this game out.
This is like when someone tries to teach me a board game, and they're like, no, you'll pick it up. Here you go. And they're like, okay, so first you need to like do this in this context, but this other thing supersedes it. Yeah,
no, I'm saying all this shit knowing that you're not going to pick it up. I'm saying all of it because it is confusing to me as I am playing. I'm playing and I'm like, oh wait, like I'm having chat explain it to me because I'm streaming the game. Chat is like, okay, no, there's currency, there's this currency, and I'm like, at a certain point, I'm like, am I buying currency with other currency? And they're like, yes, you got it. You are. That's how the game works. It's got you. And I'm like, God damn it. all that stuff aside, right? Because that is the bullshit side of the game that I'm allowing myself to get into with the currency that I already own in the game, but I'm not spending real money on it because I don't want to. I just don't want to. I don't want to spend real money. That aside, the actual gameplay of the open world stuff itself, really good, like really fun. This game learns all the right things from Breath of the Wild, which it feels like it's emulating a lot when you're talking about exploring this wild open world and the enemies being very much carbon copies of Breath of the Wild enemies, whether we're talking about the like squishy orbs that hop around that have different elements associated with them, or characters that are basically just bokoblins. Like you have all that Breath of the Wild shit in there, but it is condensed in a way that makes it feel way more JRPG, or I guess I should say action RPG than Breath of the Wild. And so like there's quest lines, there's a lot of voice acting in the game, a whole lot of voice acting in the game. The game kind of has this lighthearted energy to it. It feels like you're watching a kid's anime, right? Like a Pokemon anime or something like that. But then exploring the world is really beautiful. It is like I would say it's actually a very impressive looking open world when you run around, look around and see like just how good the game looks, especially on PS5. That's another thing too, is I'm playing the game on PS5 now, which runs way better than the game ran on PS4. I've been having such fun just going through quests, exploring and unlocking the map and doing all the shit that you would do in any standard open world game. But it's given me that Breath of the Wild fix that I haven't realized that I've missed until jumping back into it. And so, yeah, I'm having a fun time. It's keeping me from playing Psychonauts 2, which is a problem, but I'll find some time. Barrett, I'll get into it. We'll see.
Like you just Genshin Impact came out last year? That was last year, right?
Yep. Yeah, last year.
Okay. So here's the thing: is that like you should be maybe playing some more games that might be considered for Game of the Year status. Blessing, and I'm just saying, like maybe Psychonauts 2 is maybe a little more worth your time in that aspect.
Barrett, you play Batman yearly. How many times have you played Persona 5, Barrett? All right. Let me have my Persona 5, Barrett. Let me have my Persona 5. No, I that's why I want to play Psychonauts 2, is because I know it's going to be important for this year. But Genshin, being a live game, has elements that I got to keep up with for the year too.
Best ongoing game, right?
Yeah. Best ongoing game.
If we're thinking of Game Awards specifically,
event gives me a character that's going to be Game of the Year level.
Yeah, I can't talk shit. I've lost count of how many times I've played the Batman games.
It's fair.
But you played Psychonauts 2, so it's okay.
I'm on my second playthrough right now.
Psychonauts 2?
Yeah. Going for a platinum run.
Happy for you.
Yeah.
But then aside from that, I played some Ghost of Tsushima Legends on stream with Andy and Snow Mike. Or no, not Andy, sorry. Kevin and Snow Mike. That game is still a very fun time. Cannot wait for new content for that. And then I've also played Call of Duty Vanguard, the open alpha that they had. They're showcasing a new mode called Champion Hill, which I think is actually really fun. Basically what it is you go in teams of either 2 or 3. You can pick whether to do duos or trios, and you are going in with a bunch of other teams of, let's say, teams of 2, right? You're going in with a bunch of other teams of 2, and you're basically doing repetitive 2v2 matches against these other crews and trying to knock down their lives until you are the last team standing. And so it's round by round, where you go first round, it's you versus another team, and you have 12 lives to start off. You're trying to knock down that team's lives as much as you can. Round ends, you go into a next round, and you're doing the same thing with another team. And there's like an aggregate like results screen that shows you how many lives each team has. And it feels fresh. It feels different. I was surprised at how much fun I was having with it. It's an interesting sounding mode when it's put on paper, but in practice, I can see myself going back into it and enjoying it. It feels like a cool evolution of a lot of the elements that they've set up with Warzone and Battle Royale, where, during rounds, you might find money or armor on the ground to pick up. They have buy rounds where you can buy certain equipment. You can buy a spy plane, you can buy whatever, and you can take it into the next round. And it's fun. Like, there's a lot of like strategy involved, communicating with your teammate, trying to figure out like, okay, where's this team at? They're on the left. Okay, focus left. All right, cool. We have a buy round. All right, let's buy an extra life, or let's buy a spy plane, or let's upgrade your weapons. It's that kind of game flow to it, and I've been really enjoying it, playing it through the alpha. But Janet, nice. That's what I've been playing. I want to do one more thing before we round out this episode. All right, I got 2 write-ins I want to touch on. I got a write-in from Kevin Garaventa, aka the Portland Kevin, who writes in and says, "Blessing and Janet, first of all, I love almost all of the Kind of Funny shows and the community you've built over the years. That being said, how could you let the show get so far off the rails? Earlier this year, the show started with so many good segments, adding to the other great recurring ones. PS, I love photo mode, trophies and chill, and especially the PS we played this monthly game club. What happened? Please bring these segments back. I loved hearing about that one special game of the month and seeing the community seeing what the community could come up with for photo assignments. Please know that I still love the show, and to anyone listening, please get vaccinated if you haven't already. Kevin, you're exactly right. The folks could get vaccinated, and because of you, Kevin, I'm bringing back a segment. All right, a segment that I know you guys love: trophies and chill. Janet, are you ready for trophies and chill?
Hell yeah, I was born ready.
I got a write-in from JK, who writes in and says, not much of a question at all, but really missed the trophies and chill segment, so I figured I'll submit my profile. I recently spent some time wondering what game I should plat for my 100th platinum trophy, and decided to go back and clean up in Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. Highly likely, I was inspired to play the game franchise again to Barrett and Mike. Hopefully, Greg will finally go back and plat Peace Walker as well. Let's see, JK is linked to their PSN profile. Ultima JK is their PSN profile. I'm looking through it.
They now, and since this write-in, they have now 101 platinum trophies, and their 101 was Undertale. Good pick.
Was Undertale. Yeah. Good for them. Shout out. I love that. But yeah, it looks like they did get the 100th platinum for Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. They got the platinum for Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales. Doki Doki Literature Club Plus. Love that.
Twice.
Love that. They have Genshin Impact?
PS5, yeah.
Sorry, what was that?
Are they still working on that Genshin Impact Platinum, or do they have that?
No, I think it looks like they have it.
No,
they have it.
Oh,
no, on the right it fills in.
Where they got more trophies added, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
Let's see. They got the platinum for Ratchet and Clank 2016.
Classic.
Judgment, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Now this is interesting. They got the platinum for Final Fantasy VII Remake, but it says here platinumed in 53 seconds. Which means that they got the platinum on PS4.
This is the PS5 version, yeah.
Yeah, they got the platinum on PS4, then booted up on PS5, and then ran all the trophies.
Classic.
Good for you. Good for you.
Yeah, work smarter, not harder.
Maneater.
Sayonara Wild Hearts.
Favorite
super
game
good.
Of all time.
Love Sayonara Wild Hearts. A lot of Yakuza.
Control's dope.
Control is dope. Oh, a lot of
Yakuza. Yeah,
yeah.
Like there's a lot. I'm sensing a theme here. Bugsnax is a
Persona dancing game.
Nice indie ones.
Oh wow. Platinums in the Persona dancing games. God damn.
A lot of Kingdom Hearts. It's fun to go through, just scrolling through the profile, because it looks like JK took it franchise by franchise, because you get to a point where it's just all Kingdom Hearts games. All platinum too.
That's a lot of work.
Wow. Jeez.
Yeah. JK, you actually killed it. Good for you. Great work. Congratulations on your 100 platinums. Congratulations on your Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker platinum, and congratulations on your Undertale platinum. We're happy for you. And again, we're bringing back them segments, y'all. Trophies and chill. It's back. Will we finally do the hashtag PFC played this for Days Gone? No, we won't.
Never.
We have to. Also, really quick, for the trophies and chill segment, I scrolled to the bottom and they have Jack and Daxter, Precursor Legacy, but that's it. What happened to 2 and 3? Like, and if you don't like the gunplay, that's fine. But like, I feel like
one's the only one worth playing.
I just feel like there was a lot of platinums here that were definitely just like to round out the collection. Go get the platinum. Yeah, it'll be fine. That score mission's not too bad. The water slums, you can do it.
They lost the thread in Jack 2 and 3. They're like, oh, let's make a GTA clone in this platformer world. Fucking great idea,
Look, 2 is the best. 2 is the best one of the 3.
Oh.
And then 3 is rough because there's a lot of you got to drive.
2 broke my heart as an adult. I really upheld 2 as a child, and then I played it for the first time in 15 years. I think I don't know. It was recent.
Is this because I didn't like Psychonauts 2? So that's why you don't like Jack 2?
No, I held this opinion before I even knew you loved Jack and Dexter. Like, I tried to do a whole, Naughty Dog franchise playthrough where, I played through every game that they've, had, a major hand in developing. And when I got to Jack 2, I was like, I got, an hour in, and I was like, I'm just going to skip to Uncharted here.
Janet, before we go, where can people find your work?
You can find me on Twitter under the handle GameOnysus. That's also my Twitch and YouTube and everything else. So yeah, and if you don't want to go on any of those platforms for some reason, if you just go to GameOnysus.com, it links out to all my stuff.
Hell yeah. Remember, this has been PS I Love You XOXO, your PlayStation podcast, where each and every week we get together and talk about the hottest topics in PlayStation. We've got a Patreon post show for those that are subbed at the silver level of patreon.com/kindoffunnygames. So stick around for that. Otherwise, until next time, peace out.